Welcome to part 1 of What If Kushina Survived on the Night of the Nine Tails Attack Naruto x Hinata x Yugito. Please make sure to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 1. Through her agony she heard a baby's cry. She opened her eyes and focused. "Give him to me," she said weakly. The attending physician checked her pulse, it was dropping dangerously. "Kushina, you've lost a lot of blood. You need immediate surgery or you're going to die." The sight of all that blood bothered her, but she couldn't let herself freeze up when her friend's life was at stake. She held out her arms. "Tsunade, give me my son." Frowning, Tsunade nevertheless put the wrapped child into his mother's arms. "All right, but only for a moment. Then we have to begin the surgery." She carefully took her son and smiled down at him. He had his father's eyes. He was crying. "Shish, hush now my little one. Hush my little Naruto. Your mother is here and everything is all right." And as she held him he quieted down. It stunned her just how much she loved him. "Everything is all right my little one," she whispered to him. "Kushina, I have to take him." The man she loved, her husband, the father of her child, spoke. She looked up into his face and saw his tears. "No," she begged. "I take it back. You can't use him for this. Please Minato, I beg you. Not for this. Isn't it enough that you're going to die? Must you do this to your own son?" Her voice was breaking. She knew there was no choice, but she didn't care. "Whose child shall I choose?" Minato asked sadly. "How can I ask some other parent to make a sacrifice that I am not willing to make?" "I don't care," she wailed and held him closer. "It's too much to ask, it's not fair." "No Kushina, it's not," he agreed sadly. "But it must be done. I am sorry Kushina, but you have to go into surgery right now." Tsunade put a needle in her arm and injected her. "No, don't. Kushina closed her eyes. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure, took his newborn son into his arms. He wept unashamedly. "Forgive me my darling wife, forgive me my beloved son for what I must do now." He looked at Tsunade. "Will she be all right?" "I hope so, but I can't guarantee it." He nodded. He prayed that both she and Naruto would be all right. But he knew that whatever happened he would not be there to see. "Please tell her that I love her and am truly sorry, but this is the only way." "I will tell her," Tsunade promised. "But she knows already." He looked at his crying son. "They'll see you as a hero my son. They will honor you for the sacrifice you make for their sakes." Tsunade watched him leave the operating room with his son. "I am never going to see that brave man again." She couldn't even spend any more time regretting Minato's fate. She began the emergency surgery to try and save his wife. "I shouldn't even be here. I should be in a casino hundreds of miles away, but when a friend asks you to deliver her child, how do you say no?" She truly hated being in Konoha. Everything here just reminded her of all that she had lost. And now here she was trapped in the middle of a tragedy of epic proportions. "If I survive this, I swear I am never coming back to this village ever again." XXXXXXXXXXX. She slowly opened her eyes. There was sunlight coming through a window. She was lying in a small bed. "Good, you're awake," a familiar voice spoke. She had to focus for a moment. "Tsunade." Tsunade smiled and nodded. She stood up from the chair she'd been sitting in and stretched. "You're very lucky that I came. It was close, so how do you feel?" "Tired, more tired than I can ever remember being." "I believe that. You're going to need to stay in bed for at least a week to fully recover." Then she suddenly remembered. She sat bolt upright and was rewarded with a sharp stabbing pain in her belly. "Minato. Easy, easy." Tsunade eased her back into the bed. "No sudden movements. Your body is in a weakened state. You need to take it easy." She looked up at her friend. "Tsunade, is Minato?" Tsunade shook her head. "I'm very sorry Kushina, but he's gone. But he didn't die in vain. He stopped the Kyuubi and saved this entire village." She shut her eyes and grieved for him. "Oh Minato, why?" She opened her eyes and began to look about the room. "Naruto." She looked at Tsunade in panic. "Where is Naruto? Where is my son? He's alive Kushina and unhurt." Tsunade assured her, but then looked worried. "Right now he is with the old man. There is an emergency meeting of the council. They are deciding his fate." "What do you mean his fate?" His mother demanded. "I want my son right now. Kushina, I can't bring him to you, I'm sorry." "Then bring me to him." She tossed off her blanket and began getting out of bed. "Stop." Tsunade grabbed her. Kushina, if you push too hard you'll reopen your wounds and die. Fine, she grunted in pain. Get me a wheelchair then, but I'm going to my son. Seeing the look in her eyes she knew there was no arguing with her. She turned to her assistant Shizune. Please bring me a wheelchair. XXXXXXXXXXX. The demon must be killed now. Uchiha Fugaku roared to the general approval of the council. We cannot afford to waste the heroic sacrifice of the Yondaime. We must complete what he began. That would be quite short-sighted. Danzo stood and spoke firmly. This child could become Konoha's ultimate weapon. Alone he could guarantee this village's supremacy. And I say letting it live even a moment longer is too dangerous. Fugaku demanded. There is no it, the Sandaime said quietly and with dignity. There is a him. He pointed to the crib beside his seat. Amazingly the child was sleeping peacefully through all the shouting. Do you understand what it is that you are suggesting, Fugaku? You wish not only to murder a helpless infant but the Yondaime's only son. I am truly sorry that it is necessary to sacrifice the Yondaime's son to guarantee the survival of this village. But how many innocents have died already? Fugaku asked. I say the demon must be killed. Touch him and I swear I will kill you. A woman's voice cried out from the doorway. They all stopped to look. There was Uzumaki Kushina in a hospital gown sitting in a wheelchair being pushed by none other than the Sannin Tsunade. Sarutobi, give me my son. I am taking him home with me right now. Kushina demanded. How dare you interrupt us? Uchiha Fugaku spoke up. This is a meeting of the council. You have no place here. My place is wherever my son is. Kushina shot back. And as for a meeting of the council, I believe Namikaze has a hereditary seat, is it not? With the death of my husband I am now head of the Namikaze clan. Husband? Kaharu shouted. When were you married? Danzo demanded. A year and a half ago in Whirlpool Country. Minato-kun wanted to keep it secret to protect me. He did however have the marriage documents filed with the Office of Citizenry so that in case we had children their citizenship would not be in dispute. Sarutobi can personally vouch for this as Minato gave him the papers. Before an argument could erupt Sarutobi spoke up. It is true and I can provide you all with copies of the documents. An unhappy murmur ran through the council. Everyone had known that Kushina was the woman in the Yondaime's life. No one questioned Naruto's paternity. But it made a world of difference to them whether he was a fatherless bastard or the legitimate heir to one of the richest and most honored clans in Konoha. This makes no difference, Fugaku shouted. Whether the child is legitimate or not he must die to preserve Konoha. Lay one finger on him and I will kill you. Kushina threatened. And if she doesn't then I will. Tsunade growled. I am Naruto's godmother and I'll slaughter anyone who threatens my godson. Hyuga Hiyashi suddenly stood up. The Hyuga clan will also protect this child. He declared loudly, which brought all conversation to a halt. Hyuga and Namikaze have shared close ties for generations and the Yondaime was a dear friend to both me and my wife. Out of respect for his memory we will not allow any harm to befall his son. This declaration by the Hyuga clan was decisive. Even Uchiha Fugaku had no stomach for openly opposing the Sandaime, Asanin, Namikaze, and Hyuga. Kushina looked over to Hiyashi and bowed her head to him in deepest gratitude. Hiyashi nodded in acknowledgement. Sarutobi, give me my son. Kushina said. Nodding, Sarutobi reached into the crib and did just that. His mother took him and held him close. Shish, there, my little one, it's all right now. I won't let anyone hurt you. The sight of a mother holding her child made many of the council members who had been calling for blood just moments ago reconsider. They were all ninja, they were all killers, but even for ninja there should be limits. Uchiha Fugaku did not change his mind though he remained silent. I am going to pass a special decree. Sarutobi announced. In order to give this child some chance at a normal life. I order that no one who knows the truth of the Kyuubi be allowed to speak of it to anyone who does not know. And this will include speaking of it to your own children. The only people who shall be permitted to do so shall be the sitting Hokage and Naruto himself when he gets older. XXXXXXXXXXX. You should really still be in the hospital. Tsunade repeated. No, Kushina repeated. If the council members were that savage I certainly don't trust the regular villagers. I can better protect Naruto here than in a hospital. All the servants have worked here for years and loved Minato. I trust none of them would ever harm his son. Tsunade sighed once again defeated. Kushina gave her friend a sly little smile. So you're his godmother, huh? Funny, I don't recall me or Minato ever offering you the position. Tsunade looked a bit embarrassed. It's called a bluff. Sometimes you can convince an opponent you have more in your hand than you really do. Kushina shrugged. It's fine, Tsunade. Since you've volunteered, the job is yours. If anything happens to me, I expect you to take care of my son. Tsunade looked at her in panic. Nothing had better happen to you. I am not cut out to be a mother. Kushina enjoyed her first honest laugh since the whole ordeal had begun. You'd better heal me well then. Look, Kushina, Tsunade said seriously. I'll stay until you're well, but once I leave I'm not coming back. Ah, so you never want to see me or your godson ever again. She held up her son so his smiling face was looking directly at the Sannin. Naruto-kun would miss you, wouldn't you, my little Naruto-kun? Tsunade looked at the child's adorable little face. Stop it. You are shamelessly using your baby's cuteness against me. Kushina gave her one of her huge smiles. Whatever works. Tsunade grinned. All right, I'll tell you what. Since I have 2 reasons to come back here, I'll promise to return for at least a few days each year. How's that? Kushina turned her son around so that he was facing her. Well, what do you think? Naruto laughed at the funny face she made. Naruto and I accept your terms. XXXXXXXXXXX. Chapter 2. October. 5 years later. As she tried to chase down her son, she wondered if all 5-year-olds could possibly have this much energy. He was always a rather excitable boy, and now he was so excited about his party he was practically bouncing off the walls. Even with everything he had to endure, he was a very happy and in most ways very normal child. That amazed her sometimes. Naruto always seemed to be happy. She would think of the things he had missing in his life, such as his father, a group of friends his own age, or the freedom to go about unwatched. She would feel guilty thinking he was deprived. Yet then he would smile and laugh, and she would be reminded of what he did have. He had a home where he was protected and watched over, he had one kind-hearted girl who was his friend, and he had a mother who loved him with all of her heart. He had love and was never ever alone. That seemed enough to make him a very happy little boy. They lived in a mansion on a vast estate neighboring the Hyugas. They were wealthy and had loyal servants who cared for Naruto. They were rich in wealth, power, and honor. That did not mean life was easy or trouble-free. Naruto was rarely ever allowed to leave the Namikaze estates. When he did leave, he wore custom-made body armor, had an ambush squad to escort him, and had his mom there armed to the teeth. The precautions were not excessive. There had been no fewer than 47 attempts on his life. A dozen of those had been made by shinobi, with the rest being made by regular citizens. That broke her heart. Minato-kun had tried to protect her from the enemies he had made in foreign villages. But it was his own people who wanted to kill his son. The people he had died to protect. To most of them her late husband was little short of a god. The people of Konoha worshipped his memory. Yet some of them saw no contradiction when they tried to kill his son. She didn't try to argue with or convince them. She just killed them. All around the perimeter of the Namikaze estate were large red signs with blocky black letters. These signs informed one and all that trespassers would be killed on sight and without warning. And they were. She had been one of the most powerful jonin of Whirlpool Country when she'd met and fallen in love with Minato. Since her pregnancy she'd not gone on a single mission. But she'd kept her skills sharp and put them to regular use. So far she had killed 14 shinobi, including 1 chunin and 1 jonin, and 137 citizens. She carried a razor-sharp 4-foot-long katana and was a blade master. She had no problem dulling it on anyone who threatened her child. Minato had been the world's leading seal master, surpassing even his sensei Jiraiya. Every inch of the perimeter and every entryway on the mansion had been warded. She was no seal master, but Miento had shown her enough to maintain and use the seals he'd put there. No one could enter the Namikaze estates or mansion without her knowing it. And when anyone did so without her permission, she killed them. She never asked them for their reasons or offered to let them surrender. Last year in the early morning of October 10, half a dozen men managed to scramble over the 10-foot-high iron fence and barbed wire. They were clearly drunk and armed with nothing more deadly than bats and broken bottles. She could easily have knocked them out and tied them up. She didn't. She separated their heads from their drunken bodies and piled them up outside her front gate where people could see them. The Hokage had called her into his office after that and asked her why she had done that to men who were no real threat to her. Kushina replied that everyone in Konoha knew where the Namikaze estates were and who lived there. Those men had gone there deliberately, ignored the warning on the big red signs, and proceeded to climb over a 10-foot iron fence topped with barbed wire. If they were willing to do all that for the sake of trying to harm her son, then they were serious enough to deserve killing. Legally there was really nothing Sarutobi could do. When Konoha had been founded, the clans had been granted special privileges. One being that the clans were given the right to deal with trespassers in any fashion they chose, up to and including killing them on sight. Kushina deliberately fostered a frightening reputation. She thought that was the best answer for so much mindless fear and hate. Since that incident there had been only 4 attempts in the past year. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hey mom, Naruto was jumping around her. Yes dear. After the party can we go train some? His mother smiled at him and nodded. If that's what you want to do then of course dear. Yeah, he shouted and ran off again. He was only 5 but she had been giving him training. She had brought him up on stories of his father. That part of his legacy he knew well. The other part would wait a few more years. He had embraced his heritage as the son and heir of the great man and was determined to be even greater. He wanted to be Hokage and to protect the village as his father had done. That was her son's dream and she would do everything in her power to make it happen. So far she had given him taijutsu training and started on basic weapons, kunai and shuriken. He was already itching to get a katana in his hands. But he would have to master kunai and shuriken first. He loved training with her. No exercise was too hard or too repetitive so long as he was doing it with her. She would start giving him ninjutsu training before he entered the academy. She had already decided that he would attend the academy. Not so much for the instruction as for the chance to interact with his peers. If he was going to be Hokage one day then he would need to know how to deal with people in different situations. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hiyashi, his wife Hana, and their little daughter Hinata arrived. Welcome and thank you so much for coming. Kushina greeted them. Since that day in the council meeting Hiyashi and the Hyuga clan were about the only people in Konoha willing to treat Naruto like a normal child. On those rare occasions she had to be away he stayed at the Hyuga mansion under their protection. It is our pleasure, Hiyashi said. Hinata has been looking forward to this all week. Hana said with a smile. Naruto stepped forward and offered them a proper greeting. He then turned to Hinata, his favorite playmate and only friend of his own age, and gave her a huge smile. Hey Hinata-chan, want to play? The little girl immediately blushed and pressed her index fingers together. Sure Naruto-kun. He grabbed her hand and led the way. As the two of them went off to play the parents all shared a smile. Don't they make a cute couple? Kushina asked. They do indeed. Hiyashi agreed. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kakashi Nissan. Naruto shouted excitedly. The Anbu captain and former student of his father's smiled at him from beneath his mask. Yo, happy birthday Naruto. Can you summon your dogs so I can play with them? He asked eagerly. Sure. Kakashi had taken it upon himself to watch out for his beloved sensei's son. When Naruto left the estates Kakashi was always the one in charge of the Anbu escort. He also made it a point to visit him regularly to share stories about his father. Naruto in turn had come to look up to him as an older brother. XXXXXXXXXXX. The door opened to reveal a ninja with huge spiky white hair and red lines running down from his eyes. Look my little one, do you know who this is? Pervy granddad, he sang. Out. A vein immediately began to throb on Jiraiya's forehead. Kid, I've told you before not to call me that. Naruto-kun, where did you come up with that name? Kushina asked, sounding surprised. Her son looked up at her in confusion. You told me to call him that, mommy. Oh, that's right. Now I remember. She sent Jiraiya a big smile. He's going to end up with your sense of humor. Jiraiya said flatly. Yes, I suppose he will. Kami, help us all. Is there sake? XXXXXXXXXXX. Godmother, Auntie Shizune. Naruto jumped into Tsunade's arms. He was immediately caught up and smothered in kisses from the two women. Tsunade put him and smiled. Well Naruto, is it just my imagination or do you just keep getting cuter every time I see you? He put his hands behind his head and gave her a huge smile. No, I'm getting cuter. Both women burst out laughing. Oh, I agree you definitely are. Shizunu said. Kushina watched with an impish grin. Still don't think you're cut out for motherhood. Tsunade sent her friend a grin. A few days a year are my limit, any more than that and I'd go crazy. Tsunade, good to see you again. A slightly tipsy Jiraiya came out. She sent Kushina a betrayed look. I didn't know he was going to be here. Why didn't you tell me he'd be here? Kushina smiled. I wanted you to come. Frowning, Tsunade grabbed the bottle of sake Jiraiya was holding. Give me that. She brought it to her lips and downed it in one swig. Is something wrong, godmother? She smiled down at Naruto with a bit more color in her cheeks. Oh no honey, I'm just happy. Jiraiya laughed. Wait a couple hours and she'll be even happier. Kushina just managed to cover up her son's eyes so he didn't see godmother start beating on granddad. XXXXXXXXXX. Hello Naruto, happy birthday. Hey old man, Naruto said. Naruto-kun, please show our guest the proper respect and call him Hokage-sama. Kushina said gently. What? An insulted Jiraiya approached them. His left eye was closed and the large black eye made an interesting contrast to the rest of his face. I am Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas of legend, the all-knowing Toad Sage, as well as a respected and famous author. How come you have Naruto treat Sarutobi with respect but not me? Kushina sent him a frosty smile. Sarutobi never tried to peep on me in the bathhouse. It was a compliment. Oh yeah, well if you ever try and compliment me like that again I'll take something a lot more precious to you than your life. Her eyes dropped to a spot below his belt. He suddenly stiffened and walked away. I'm getting more sake before Tsunade drinks it all. The Hokage let out a depressed sigh. My students. XXXXXXXXX. As she talked to Hana she felt a familiar sensation on her arm. Damn it, why now? Keeping a serene look on her face she excused herself. She calmly walked to the outer hallway. Seeing she was alone she quickly rolled up one of her sleeves to expose her left forearm. On it was an intricate tattoo of a tree with branches and 132 leaves. Each leaf contained a number. The tattoo was of course a seal, one Jiraiya had been kind enough to give her that connected her to all the wards on the estates. Looking at the tattoo, the tree trunk, branches, and leaves all seemed to be made of black ink. Except for the leaf that bore the number 77, that one was red. She rolled the sleeve back down and casually headed towards the front door. Her habit of always being armed and in her gear meant she didn't have to waste time getting ready. With luck she could be back before anyone even knew she had gone. Mom! Naruto ran up to her just as she was heading for the door. She let out a small sigh. He seemed to have a sixth sense when it came to her leaving or returning. Mom, where are you going? He latched onto her leg. Smiling she reached down and stroked one of his whiskered cheeks. Mommy just needs to take care of something, then I'll be right back. He tightened his grip on her leg. Don't go Mom, I want you to stay. She looked into his face and saw that he was scared. He was a very strong and brave boy. Most of the time he handled things with a maturity far beyond his years. But then there were times when he behaved like a 5-year-old. More specifically, he acted like a 5-year-old whose mother was his entire world. He usually hid it well, but she knew he hated it whenever she was away. Smiling she bent down and gave him a comforting hug. It's all right my dear one. She looked over at the grandfather clock in the hall. Naruto-kun, what time does the clock say? He looked over at the large ornate clock. It says 7:33. She gave him a confident look. Mommy will be back in 5 minutes, before the clock says 7:38. This seemed to calm his fears. Promise Mommy. I promise. She gave him a kiss on his cheek. I never go back on my word, for that is my ninja way. Now go and play with Hinata. Naruto nodded and went into the family room where Hinata was rubbing Pakun's belly. She checked her watch and hurried to the door. Kakashi had watched the scene play out in a suspicion what was going on. Anything I can help you with, Kushina? She sent the young Anbu captain a light-hearted smile. Oh no, just woman's work. XXXXXXXXX. She didn't have trouble finding him. He was hiding in some bushes on the southern end of the estates where the woods were. They always through the south end where the trees and shrubs were. Never mind that there were 300 yards of flat ground and mowed grass to the mansion. You're early. Her voice called to him. Ack. The single man jumped to his feet, pulled out his weapon, and looked up. There about 20 feet above him stood a beautiful woman with long red hair. As she was currently defying gravity standing parallel to the ground, her feet planted on the tree trunk. Her hair draped off to the side. She was dressed in a black bodysuit with very dark red stripes running down the arms and legs. Around her forehead she wore a Hitai-ite, but not one with the leaf symbol. Hers had 8 lines curving to meet in the center, like a pinwheel or whirlpool. Along her belt she had several pouches and some bulky lines along her body suggested she wore body armor underneath. He could also see the handle of a weapon sticking out from behind her left shoulder. Red Death, he gasped. She smiled and nodded. Yeah, that's what idiots like you call me. She shrugged. It's fine since that's exactly what I am to anyone who threatens my son. She looked at her watch. I have to be back in 3.5 minutes, that's how long you have left to live. She looked down at him considering. You know I decided to celebrate his birthday a day early because every October 10th I have to deal with idiots like you. The first year I had to deal with 3 separate groups, one of them led by a chunin. So after last year I finally decided to just celebrate it a day early. I mean so long as he gets to eat cake, open presents, and play with people he's happy. Maybe next year we'll just celebrate in July or August. She looked at her watch again. 3 minutes to go now. Why? The man choked out. Why what? Why am I talking to you? Why do I love double mint fudge? Why do you protect that monster? He never saw them coming. All he saw were her arms move in a blur. The next thing he knew he was on the ground screaming. A dozen kunai were jutting out of him. As he continued to cry out she spoke to him in a clear calm voice. You're not very bright are you? Here's a tip, never tell a mother her child is a monster. Here's another tip, if you're just a villager with a rusty sword don't take on a ninja. Especially not if she used to be an Anbu captain in her homeland. And just one more tip, when you see big red signs posted everywhere you should pay attention to them. She glanced at her watch. 2 minutes. Despite his pain and being at her mercy he looked up at her in pure hate. He killed my father. He crushed him. Who did? She asked not caring to make anything easy for him. You know who. If you mean my son I don't see how he could as he's not very heavy. You mock me. He growled. No, I'd have to like you at least a little bit to mock you. I find you and your kind utterly despicable. I am sorry for the loss of your father to the Kyuubi. Though I doubt you believe me the fact is I mean that. I lost my husband, and I loved him. I hate the Kyuubi as much as anyone in this village. But hating the prisoner in no way justifies attacking his jailer. He has the Kyuubi inside him. That's right, she said. My husband gave his life to imprison the Kyuubi and my son will spend every day of his life keeping the Kyuubi imprisoned. And just so you know this is the last minute of your life. He has to die to protect the village. As he watched the one they called Red Death leapt down beside him. She reached over her shoulder and pulled out a long thin curved blade. No, she said firmly. He has to live to protect this village. He is my husband's legacy. He has all of Minato's strengths inside him. I can see in him that same love and courage that made my husband what he was. And when I look close I can see the greatest of all future Hokages. He will protect this village someday as his father did. And now, she lifted her katana high over her head. Go to whatever hell is reserved for those who would kill children. The sword fell and did its work in a single cut. XXXXXXXXXX. She ran in and looked at the clock. 15 seconds to spare. She quickly approached her son confident he would not notice anything. One of the advantages of wearing black and dark red was that blood stains were practically invisible. See my dear one, mommy made it back just like she promised. Naruto looked up at her excitedly. Mom, can we open presents now? Kushina smiled and nodded. Of course dear, anything for you. Chapter 3. He was standing in front of a mirror looking at himself. The body armor felt a little snug like always, but he liked the way it looked. You look so handsome my little Naruto-kun, his mother said happily. He looked at her and hesitated a bit. Mom, he said, is it all right to be scared? With a gentle smile she went down on her knees and hugged him tight. My little one, of course it is. I've felt fear many times. You. He looked at her in shock. She laughed and pulled him into another hug. Of course, being shinobi doesn't mean we stop being human. Bravery is not having a lack of fear. It's the ability to do what you need to even in the face of your fear. Always do what you know to be right, even if you are afraid. If you do that, I will always be proud of you. He immediately hugged her back fiercely. I want you to be proud of me, Mom. My little one, I have never been anything else. When he finally let go of her, she got up to get his coat and help him put it on. Once it was on, he looked at himself in the mirror again. Mom, if I wear this, everyone is going to notice me. He looked at her questioningly. You always say a good ninja should be able to blend in anywhere. Won't this make me stand out? She nodded, pleased that he had taken that lesson to heart. Most boys his age were eager to stand out. Naruto wanted to earn people's respect through his actions. He didn't care about simply being noticed for how he looked. In this village, Naruto-kun, there is no avoiding that. When you begin your shinobi career and travel to other places, you can try and become invisible. But in Konoha, everyone who looks at you will know who you are. Suddenly her face changed and she gave him one of her rare stern looks. Inside he panicked and wondered if he had done something wrong. Listen very carefully to what I am about to say, Naruto. Paling a bit, he nodded and gave his mom his complete attention. People are going to look at you, Naruto, and some of them will hate you. Don't ever wonder if it's your fault they look at you with hate. Those people are blind and will never see the truth no matter how many times you show it to them. But for everyone else, try and show them what is in here. She gently touched his chest. And here. She touched his forehead. Show all of them that you are Namikaze, Naruto. You are your father's son and you are my son. In you is all the best of the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans. In you, my son, is a great man and great leader. Someday you will be clan head and, I have no doubt, you will be the greatest of all Hokages. She shut her eyes and tried not to sob. Oh Minato, if only you could see him, how proud you'd be. Mom, why are you crying? Naruto felt himself about to start crying as well and didn't know why. Opening her eyes, she quickly wiped her cheeks and gave him a reassuring smile. I am crying because the world is unfair. Naruto, I want you to promise me something. Anything, Mom. Promise me that whatever happens in your life, no matter how you may be hated, no matter what terrible secrets you may learn, and no matter how hard things may become, promise me that you will never forget who you are. He put his arms around her and hugged her with all of his might. Mom, I swear to you on my life that I will never forget who I am or who I come from. That's my promise of a lifetime. And you never go back on your word because that is your nindo. She smiled at her son. He nodded. Just like yours. She gave her son a kiss on the cheek and brightened a bit. Well, let's go, Naruto-kun, or your silly mother will make you late for your first day at the academy. XXXXXXXXXX. Are you all right, Hinata-san? Kurenai asked, feeling real sympathy for the poor girl. She seemed very depressed. I am fine, she said dully. Please just call me Hinata. Just a short while ago her father had told her that he was disappointed in her and did not think she was a worthy successor. Since her mother's death 2 years ago, her father had grown increasingly distant and critical. His harsh words not only hurt her, they played on her own self-doubt. I'm weak, maybe father is right. Hey Hinata-chan. Her thoughts lifted when she heard his voice. He and his mother were approaching. She immediately noticed how he was dressed. Oh, hello Naruto-kun, why, you look very handsome this morning. She felt herself begin to blush as she smiled shyly. Her index fingers were pressing against each other. Naruto gave her one of his big smiles and scratched the back of his head. Thanks Hinata-chan, you look as cute as you always do. Hearing that, she immediately went 3 shades darker. Kurenai offered a formal bow to the woman who was the head of the Namikaze clan. I am Yuhi Kurenai and am most honored to meet you, Kushina-san. I thank you for allowing Hinata and I to accompany you and your son. Kushina smiled and returned the bow. Please call me Kushina. And you are very welcomed. Hinata is a dear child and I welcome one more set of eyes to watch out for trouble. Hinata laughed and the two of them looked at her and Naruto. Kurenai grinned and sent Kushina a questioning look. Kushina grinned and nodded. 2 Anbu operatives landed about 10 feet from them. One of them approached and bowed to Kushina. Kushina-san, I am Captain Tenzo and I am in charge of the 2-man Anbu squad that will escort your son to the academy and back again. Kushina acknowledged him with a slight bow of her own. Thank you, Captain. With Kakashi out of the village, I trust that you will make sure of my son's safety. Kakashi thinks highly of you and I trust his opinion. If he trusts you, then I will as well. Thank you Kushina-san. He and his partner disappeared. Kushina turned to the two children. Shall we go? Yeah. Come on Hinata. As was his habit he grabbed her hand and led the way. As was her habit she blushed and followed him. Hinata kept a small grin as they walked in public. Though she knew they were only friends she let herself pretend for a bit that he was her boyfriend and they were strolling hand in hand. As they went down the streets they noticed. As Kushina had warned her son, everyone in Konoha knew instantly who he was. And if by some bizarre miracle they hadn't, what he was wearing would have driven it home. The reception was about what Kushina had expected. Perhaps 1 in 10 people openly scowled or looked angrily at them. But no one dared to yell or curse at them, never mind approach them. Kushina's reputation was such that even on crowded streets they tended to be given at least 10 feet of space. About 1 in 10 actually bowed or cheered as they passed. These were people to whom Naruto was the Yondaimi's son, not the Kyuubi. To them at least Naruto really was a hero, or at least the son of a hero, which would do. To Kushina this minority represented how everyone in Konoha should have behaved towards her son. Seeing them gave Kushina a small hope that things would get better. Actually they had gotten better. There had been no attacks for a year and a half, not even on the last anniversary. Kushina wasn't sure if that meant people were finally becoming more understanding or that she had finally killed enough idiots to make her point clear. Probably a combination of both, but so long as they stop attacking Naruto I don't really care why. So 10% still hated him, 10% loved him, and the other 80%. They got out of the way and kept their faces blank. What were they thinking? A Yamenka might have known but she didn't. Were the majority just better at hiding their hatreds or were they simply accepting of things? Time would tell, she supposed. XXXXXXXXXXX. So what are you up to, foreheads girl? A loud blonde 8-year-old girl shouted. What do you mean, Ino pig? A fierce pink-haired girl replied. I know you're planning to sit near Sasuke-kun. Well, go ahead and give it up. No one is getting Sasuke but me. Sasuke-kun is going to fall in love with me, Ino pig. He and I share one soul. It's destiny. Destiny. Let me tell you something. She suddenly noticed a small group entering the academy grounds. She noticed one person in particular. An extremely well-dressed and muscular-looking blonde boy. And he was walking hand in hand with a Hyuga. Hello Earth to Ino pig. Sakura snapped her fingers in front of her best friend, worst enemy. What's wrong with you? Hey Sakura, who is that? She pointed. I thought I knew all the hot boys in Konoha but I've never seen him before. Sakura took a look. I don't know. But back to Sasuke. A dark-haired girl who wore her hair in pigtails suddenly squealed. It's him. Delona said. Who? Ino asked, really curious now. Delona gave them a dreamy smile. The Yondaimi's son. XXXXXXXXXXX. Upon reaching the academy grounds they stopped. Checking her watch she saw the kids had 5 minutes. She put a hand on her son's shoulder. Did you bring everything? She asked him. Yes mom. Do you have your lunch? He nodded. Do you have your kunai and shuriken? Yes, and they're all sharpened. I see you have your sword. He wore it on his back like she did. Is that sharp too? He frowned. Well, it's as sharp as I can get it, but it's just a regular old sword. Now if I had a katana. No, she continued. You have your radio communicator. Of course, and it's preset to the emergency frequency. If anything happens just hit the send button and I will be here in less than 2 minutes. I know mom, he said in a bored tone. He loved her but she was treating him like a little kid. Now if anyone attacks you for any reason, even if it's an instructor or someone in Anbu uniform, I hit the communicator and fight with my sword. And when the sword is drawn. When the sword is drawn, ready it to take blood, for when the sword is drawn safety comes only in the death of your foes. Kushina nodded, that was the correct answer, she hadn't expected anything less. She racked her brain trying to think of anything that might have been overlooked. Oh, Naruto-kun, did you put on clean underwear this morning? Hinata couldn't help herself, she started giggling. Naruto put his head in his hands. Mom please. XXXXXXXXXXX. The Yondaimi's son, Ino said excitedly. I didn't know he was even going to be in our class. Delona, are you sure? The girl rolled her eyes. Look at him for a second. He's practically a younger version of the Yondaimi. Plus if that's not enough, look who he's talking to. Red-haired kunoichi with a sword and a whirlpool Hitai-ite. Ino's jaw dropped. Of course she was the queen of all gossip and knew about everyone who was anyone. So of course she knew all about Namikaze Kushina. I don't believe it's really her. The red HMPH. Sakura slapped a hand over her mouth. Are you crazy? Sakura whispered to her irate blonde friend. You know the stories. If she hears you call her that, she'll kill you. No, Delona said with certainty. It's if you say her name 3 times in a row in a darkened room. Another girl spoke up. I heard that if she catches you alone after dark, she'll cut your head off and bring it home with her. Well, I heard that she comes to cut your head off if you do it before you get married. Another girl spoke up. Do what? Sakura asked. Ino finally managed to get her surprisingly strong friend's hand off her mouth. Enough. Ino turned to rail at Sakura and the other girls. What is wrong with all of you? You give Kunoichi a bad name. She's obviously just a powerful ninja and nothing else. I swear you're all a bunch of chickens. How are you going to be ninja if you're scared of a bunch of wild stories? Oh really? Sakura asked. Well, I don't see you going up to talk to her. If you're so brave, go and say something to her. I would, but I don't have anything to say. Ino replied. Sakura grinned. Sure, Ino chicken, sure. A couple of the other girls began to make clucking sounds. Ino's face darkened. There were 2 things she never allowed people to question. Her fashion sense and her courage. Fine, I'll show you what a real kunoichi is. She headed to where the whirlpool ninja was talking to the miniature yondaime. Ino actually smiled. Maybe I can make a really good impression on him. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto-kun, Hinata asked quietly. She was looking at the academy and other children nervously. Yes, Hinata-chan. Looking into his clear blue eyes, she found herself wishing she was more like him. He didn't have any weaknesses, she seemed to be nothing but. Naruto-kun, she hesitated. She would never admit this to her father, but she felt sure the Namikazes and Kurenai would not tell him, and she was desperate for some comfort. Naruto-kun, I'm scared. She immediately cast her eyes down. I know that I shouldn't be, but I am. It's okay. Hinata-chan, I'm a little scared too. Her eyes shot up and she stared at him, not believing it. You. He grinned. Yeah, me, but it's alright because even though we're shinobi, we're still human too. Being brave isn't about not feeling fear, it's about overcoming the fear to do what you have to. She began pressing her fingers together nervously. Wow, what if you're not strong enough to overcome the fear? Naruto reached out and took both her hands into his. Hinata-chan, I'm sure you have all the strength you need to meet any challenge. I believe in you. Those were the kindest words she'd heard since her mother had passed. And they meant much more to her than Naruto would ever guess. Naruto-kun, I feel courage when I look at you. She swallowed. She wasn't quite that brave, yet. I feel strong enough now, arigato. Kushina smiled. My Naruto-kun, you've grown very wise. Maybe we shouldn't even bother with the academy after all. Maybe we should just give you the graduation test right now. He looked at her excitedly. If I pass it, will you give me a katana? No. Hello. They all turned to look at a young blonde girl in a purple dress and leg wrappings. Hello. Kushina answered. The girl immediately bowed to her. I am Yamanaka Ino. This is my first day at the academy. I am hoping to make some new friends. She sent Naruto a huge smile. Hinata got the feeling that Ino didn't even see her. Ino looked at Kushina and spoke carefully as though she were treading a minefield. Am I mistaken in believing that you are Namikaze Kushina? And that this is your very handsome son? Kushina gave the girl a slight nod. She didn't miss the way she was eyeing her son or the nervous way Hinata was pressing her index fingers together. Kushina let out a small sigh. Well, I wanted him to interact with his peers. He was bound to meet a girl besides Hinata sometime. I didn't expect the very first one to be quite so friendly. I am Kushina and this is my son Naruto, Hyuga Hinata, and Yuha Kurenai. I am pleased to meet you, Ino. She offered Kushina another bow. I am greatly honored to meet you, Kushina-san. She turned her full attention to Naruto. I am also very happy to meet you, Naruto-kun. Kushina raised an eyebrow. Very friendly. Hinata stood there and simply pressed her index fingers together even more nervously. Kun. She's just met him and she is already calling him Naruto-kun. She's very pretty and very sure of herself, not like me. Naruto gave her a very wary smile and a slight bow. He wasn't sure what to make of her, but he didn't want to offend anyone on the first day. I am very happy to meet you as well, Ino. She laughed and put a hand on his arm. Oh, please call me Ino-chan. She gave Hinata a quick glance. And is this your friend? Naruto nodded. Yes, Hinata-chan is my very best friend. Ino turned her full attention on Hinata now. She was still smiling, but the smile was not the same one she had given Kushina or Naruto. This one had something a bit predatory in it. Oh, Hinata-chan, I hope we can be friends too. It's so sweet that Naruto-kun thinks of you as his best friend. Most boys aren't comfortable having girls as just friends. It's nice that Naruto doesn't have trouble seeing you that way. Well, I have to get to class, I'll see you inside. She reached out and touched his arm again. Bye, Naruto-kun. As she walked away, she put just a little bit of sway in her hips. Hinata looked down at the ground. In about half a minute that girl had managed to make her feel completely ugly and plain. She obviously wasn't someone Naruto-kun would ever choose to be with. Weird, Naruto said. Without a thought, he grabbed Hinata's hand and began leading her to the academy entrance. Come on, Hinata-chan, we don't want to be late. He was looking at the academy so completely missed the look of relief on Hinata's face. Kushina watched the two of them go with a shake of the head. It suddenly occurred to her that of all the lessons she had given her son on history, ethics, math, taijutsu, weapons, chakra control, and other subjects, she hadn't spoken to him even once about girls and how to deal with them. She shook her head, not believing she had completely forgotten something so vital. Great, I've sent him into battle completely unarmed. Well, if he survives today, I'll start explaining about girls tonight. After all, they're at least as dangerous to him as assassins. XXXXXXXXXX. Wow. I can't believe you actually talked to her, Ino. What did she say? Delona was pulling on her pigtails excitedly. Forget her. What did he say, the Yondaimi's son? Another girl asked. Oh, you mean Naruto-kun? She said indifferently. Naruto-kun. You actually called him that? Delona practically screamed. I sure did. Ino sounded as though it were the least important thing in the world. Let's get to class, I'll tell you all about talking to Naruto-kun in there. Hey Ino pig. Don't think I didn't see what you did. You were flirting with him. How dare you do that to Sasuke-kun? Ino sent Sakura a self-satisfied little smile. Sasuke who? Chapter 4. Naruto and Hinata stepped into the classroom together. Most of the children were already seated. Many of them seemed to know each other and there was loud chatter. Naruto looked at the seats, trying to find a couple that were open net to each other. Who are you supposed to be? A voice spoke to him. Naruto looked over to the first row where a boy with black hair and dark eyes was looking amused. Excuse me? Naruto asked. What's with the get-up? The boy clarified. Naruto was wearing a black bodysuit with dark red stripes along the arms and legs. Beneath he wore his custom-made body armor. Along his belt were several pouches and on his back he had a sword strapped on. But that wasn't what had gotten the other boy's attention. It was the cloak. Naruto had on a pristine white cloak with flames along the bottom. It was an exact replica of what his father had worn as Hokage. When Naruto wore it, the resemblance was unmistakable. I wear it in honor of my father. Naruto said tightly. For him, his father was a subject he could not speak of without strong feeling. The boy chuckled, thinking the newcomer who was obviously just desperate to get attention. Sure, you're just trying to be a fake Yondaime. The boy's chuckle was cut off when he suddenly felt a killer intent stronger than any he ever had. The blonde boy's hands were twitching and his eyes were looking at him with something dark and hateful. He wasn't the only one in the room who could sense such intense feeling. The talk in the classroom died away and everyone looked at the boy who was glaring at Sasuke. Hinata could feel their eyes on her as well as the killer intent coming off Naruto. She felt like shrinking away. Naruto didn't seem to notice. My name is Namikaze Naruto, he said in a voice that was low and tight. My father was Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage. Sasuke smiled and leaned back in his chair. Oh, so you're him, huh? My father said I should stay away from you, that you were dangerous. Your father was right. He took a breath and brought his anger back under control. What's your name? Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto smiled. Well, Sasuke, my first impression is that you're a jerk. He reached back to take hold of Hinata's hand again. Come on, Hinata, there are a couple seats in the top row. Sasuke watched him go with a smirk. His mom might be dangerous, but he was nothing special. XXXXXXXXX. Ino watched as the two of them passed her. Seeing her, Naruto gave a quick nod which she took as proof of his infatuation with her. He is so cool. She sighed. You're drooling. A bored voice next to her said. Shut up, you lazy jerk. Don't disturb me when I'm thinking about my one true love. Yours and every other girl's. I almost feel sorry for Sasuke. Huh. She gave the sleepy boy next to her a triumphant smile. Shows what you know. I am so over Sasuke. Oh. Shikamaru somehow found the energy to lift one eyebrow. Who's your latest victim? Ow. He rubbed the back of his head. HMPH. Well, it just so happens that I have fallen completely in love with Namikaze Naruto. Shikamaru craned his neck to look at the seats on the top row across from him. For him this was a huge effort. He looked at the boy sitting talking to a girl who was obviously a Hyuga. His get-up was obviously meant to draw attention. My folks told me to be very careful around him, but they wouldn't say why. He shrugged. Not that they needed to, given who his mom is. Every child in the classroom had been told more or less the same thing about Naruto. The exact words and the degree of vehemence varied, but the basic message was the same. Stay away. And none of them would say why exactly. Of course all the children were smart enough to figure out the reason. His mother was someone so scary mothers used her to frighten their children. It was easy to understand why the parents would want their children to keep clear of her son. Anyway, he doesn't look dangerous. Oh, he is. She looked over dreamily. You can tell just by looking at him. For Ino and most of the other girls, the fact that her parents had warned her to stay away from him only made him even more attractive. He was dangerous. She even liked those weird scars on his cheeks. They gave him an exotic sort of feral look. He was definitely one of a kind. She was starting to drool again. Shikamaru decided saying anything more would be troublesome, so he put his head back down and tried to take a nap. XXXXXXXXXXX. Iruka and Mizuki both stood in the doorway observing the class for a moment. They had both witnessed the confrontation between Sasuke and Naruto. They had been on the point of intervening when Naruto brought his killer intent back under control. So what do you think? Mizuki asked. Iruka sighed. I think these are going to be a very interesting 4 years. He gave Mizuki a small grin. He really does look like him, doesn't he? Mizuki nodded warily. On the outside he does. But then he smiled. He certainly doesn't lack confidence. We have an Uchiha, a Hyuga, and a Namikaze in one class. This has got to be the first time that's happened in at least 20 years. Iruka sighed. At least he seems to be getting along with the Hyuga girl. Hopefully he learns to get along with the Uchiha as well. Somehow I don't think that's going to happen. He looked at his watch. It's 8. Iruka nodded. Right. With that he and Mizuki entered the classroom. The children quickly quieted down when they saw them. Iruka took a spot directly in front of their seats. He gave them all a smile and motioned for silence. After a moment he spoke. Hello children, my name is Yumino Iruka, and this is my associate Manos Mizuki. You will refer to us as Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei. For the next 4 years while you are here we will be your primary instructors in the ninja arts. While you are here in this classroom or in the dojo or in the practice fields you are our responsibility. In the mornings we will concentrate on texts and written materials. At these times I will usually be in charge. In the afternoons, after lunch, you will receive physical exercise and training in taijutsu and basic weapons. At these times Mizuki will normally be in charge of you. Along with this standard instruction you can also expect to go on several field trips to develop survival skills. Now to help us to get to know each other I would like each of you to stand up and tell us who you are and what you hope to become. One by one the students did so. I want, munch munch munch. To be just like my dad and show everyone that a pleasantly plump person can be a great ninja. HMPH, I want to be an ordinary ninja. Have an ordinary career, marry a girl who is not too pretty or too ugly, have 2 kids, a girl and then a boy, retire when my daughter marries and my son becomes a ninja, and then enjoy a peaceful and carefree retirement until I die before my wife. I want to prove that a kunoichi can be beautiful and powerful. And I want to win the love of a special someone. The girl turned around and blew Naruto a kiss. Naruto had no idea what to think of this while Hinata began to press her index fingers again. I want to be a good kunoichi and I also want. The girl looked at Sasuke and dissolved into giggles. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I want to prove myself worthy of my father's respect and to match my Nissen. I seek to master all of my clan's jutsus and to eventually help breed a new species of Kikai bug. I want to become a great ninja and fight with my dog Akamaru. As her turn approached, she began to panic at the thought of all those people looking at her and her having to talk. But then she felt Naruto's hand cover hers. He could always tell when she was really nervous. He leaned in and whispered to her. Don't worry Hinata-chan, I know you'll be fine. She smiled at him and nodded. Arigato, Naruto-kun. It was amazing how just his touch and just a few words could set her mind at ease. When her turn came, she stood and spoke in a clear voice. I am Hyuga Hinata. I wish to become a strong leader for my clan and to earn my father's respect, and the respect of one other person. She sat back down, relieved she had managed to get through that without a stutter. Naruto slowly stood. I am Namikaze Naruto. I have only one goal, an ambition really. I want to be the greatest Hokage that Konoha has ever seen. No one laughed at him. For they all knew that such a thing was hardly impossible for one with the Namikaze name and the blood of a Hokage in his veins. Iruka nodded, well satisfied with how well it had gone. Most of them lacked a strong sense of purpose and fell back on the standard answer of just being a great ninja or kunoichi. That was normal. While they were here they would develop a strong sense of what they wanted or they would wash out. Some of them already possessed a very strong sense of purpose. His eyes drifted back up to Naruto. Well, thank you, that was very informative. You can trust both Mizuki and myself to do everything we can to help each and every one of you to reach your goals. Now we need to get an idea of your abilities. To begin with, can any of you use a jutsu? He didn't expect anyone to raise their hands. At this age only someone who was a genius would be able to mold chakra. But to his very great surprise not one but 3 hands rose. Well, this should be interesting. Very well, Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Naruto, come down here please. The 3 boys were soon standing before him. All right, who would like to go first? Shikamaru spoke up. Man, this is a drag, let me go so I can rest again. Iruka frowned at him. You should be well rested when you come here each day. There is no excuse for not being ready for a full day when you arrive here. In any case, please show me your jutsu. Shikamaru nodded and went through some hand signs. Shadow possession technique. His shadow flowed 5 feet until it merged with Iruka's. Iruka was compelled to put his hands on his head and begin dancing around, mimicking Shikamaru and greatly amusing everyone in the class. All right, that's enough. Iruka called out. Shikamaru ended the jutsu and Iruka tried to regather his dignity. Thank you Shikamaru, that was very impressive. Shikamaru nodded and slouched back to his seat. Sasuke, why don't you go next? The boy smirked. Can we go outside? It's a fire jutsu. Iruka nodded. All right class, we're going outside. After about 5 minutes the class and instructors had assembled on the asphalt outside. All right Sasuke, please demonstrate. Sasuke ran through the hand signs. Fireball technique. From his mouth a boulder of fire at least 5 feet across appeared. He let it land on the asphalt. He heard the other kids all shout and applaud, of course. He calmly turned back to his stunned instructors, both of them were gaping at him. Very impressive Sasuke. Iruka praised. The power of the Uchiha clan. Mizuki said with a little bit of awe. Smiling happily he headed back to rejoin the other students. As he passed Naruto he smiled at him. Top that fake Yondaime. Naruto shot him daggers from his eyes as the smug little genius passed him. His hands twitched and he longed to take out his sword. He did manage to keep his killer intent from spiking though. Oh, I'll top that, you arrogant little jerk. When Iruka called him forward he decided to put as much chakra as he could into this. He thought this might go well. He was seriously pissed off at the moment and he'd found that whenever he got really angry he seemed to have more chakra than usual. He thought of it as red chakra and it always felt different from his regular chakra, he could feel it in him now. He went through the hand signs. Shadow clone technique. And then just for an instant the entire area was covered with smoke. When the smoke lifted, Iruka, Mizuki, and the class were entirely surrounded by about 200 clones. What? Mizuki stared out in complete shock. He wasn't the only one, the entire class was shouting and pointing. Iruka reached out and actually touched the 2 nearest clones. Sure enough, they weren't illusions. Naruto. How on earth did you do that? What do you mean? He looked at the one who had answered. Shadow clones are a high-level Jonin jutsu. How did you learn it? Oh, well, my mom tried teaching me how to make regular bushins, but I was terrible at it, still am. It turns out I have a lot of chakra capacity, even more than my mom has. She finally realized that the reason I couldn't make bushins was that I have trouble controlling very small amounts of chakra. I actually have an easier time with jutsus that require lots of chakra. So she had me learn how to make shadow clones. But it's a forbidden jutsu, Mizuki spoke up. How did you get access to it? It's in my family library. Naruto replied casually. Really? Mizuki said. Well, now this has possibilities. Naruto, just how long did it take you to learn this? Iruka asked. Naruto shrugged. It just took a few hours, it wasn't that hard. Now Iruka and Mizuki were both staring at him open-mouthed. What? Iruka shook his head. He had learned an A-rank jutsu in a few hours and performed it better than anyone below cage level could. Naruto, do you know, I truly believe that you just may be Hokage one day. Mizuki gave him a surprised look. The students were whispering among themselves, repeating what Iruka had just said. Naruto gave Iruka a huge grin. You mean that, Iruka-sensei? Iruka nodded solemnly. If you can do this much now, you're likely already at Jonin level. Definitely high chunin. In fact, if you like, I'd be willing to give you the graduation test now. If your scholastic knowledge is good, you could definitely pass it and become a genin right now. What? No way can that loser be stronger than me. The way they're talking about him sounds like the way they talk about Nissan. I'm an Uchiha, he can't be better than me. Sasuke thought venomously. Oh Naruto-kun, I am so proud of you. You truly are amazing, and I know you'll be a great Hokage. Because you can do anything you truly want. Hinata thought proudly but sadly. How will I get through school without you? Oh no. I can't lose Naruto-kun now. How can I make him fall completely in love with me if I'm stuck here while he's doing missions? Ino thought desperately. Damn it, this is not good. Mizuki thought of arguments against giving Naruto the graduation test now. It was rare but not unheard of. But fortunately Naruto shook his head. Thanks Iruka-sensei, but my mom already told me she wants me to stay in for the full 4 years. She says I need to develop my social skills. Iruka nodded. All right, but please tell your mother that I am prepared to administer the test at any time. Naruto nodded happily. So do you know any other jutsus? About a dozen, he said without concern. He smirked. Anything interesting? If he knew shadow clones, it only made sense he would know other lower level jutsus. But nothing could top what he'd done already. Well, I can summon. Iruka looked at him carefully. Show me please, but first would you mind dismissing your clones? No problem. With a thought he got rid of all his clones. Then he bit down on his thumb. Summoning technique. He slammed his hand onto the asphalt. With a large puff of smoke, a 5-foot-tall red and black frog was there. Iruka nodded. I knew the Yondaime could summon frogs. But for you to do so you have to sign a contract. How were you able to do that? Naruto smiled. Oh granddad let me. Granddad. Jiraiya, he was my father's sensei and he drops by to see me whenever he's in town. You've had the great Jiraiya teach you. You've had one of the Sannin as a sensei. Well, I don't know if you can really call him my sensei. He just shows me a few things like summoning and then he goes off to do research somewhere. Tsunade's even worse, I only get to see her once a year. And she always wants to show me how to do medical jutsu. He shook his head. Iruka and Mizuki were staring at him again. I don't suppose Orochimaru visits you too, does he? Iruka asked. Who? Never mind. All right Naruto, very impressive. All right, let's get back to the classroom. XXXXXXXXXXX. He and Hinata had found a table in the cafeteria and were sitting down to eat. What did you bring for lunch, Naruto-kun? Naruto gave her a very happy smile. Oh, it's a real treat, mom made her special ramen for me. I wish she would make it for me more often. But she says it's not healthy for me and stunts your growth. Well Naruto-kun, if you ate ramen all the time you probably wouldn't be taller than me. Hinata tried to point out the positive. Can I sit with you, Naruto-kun? Naruto turned around to see Ino standing beside him with a tray. Oh sure Ino. Smiling, she took the seat across from him. She gave Hinata, who was sitting next to him, a very slight and quick frown. Oh, Hinata-chan, are you doing anything later after class? No, why? Well, Hinata-chan, I thought if you like I could take you shopping with me. I mean, we could get you something to wear that actually shows off your feminine side. You know, instead of the gender-neutral clothes you have on now. I mean, the only reason to wear a bulky beige jacket is if you're embarrassed by your figure. That's not the reason you wear it, is it, Hinata-chan? Hinata felt herself wanting to shrink again. No, she said in a small voice. I mean, if it is, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Some girls are just late bloomers. Naruto looked at her. We're all 8-year-olds, no one has yet. Well, you have, Naruto-kun. She reached across the table to touch his forearm. Ooh, you are so muscular. How did you get so strong? Weight training and regular exercises. Can you give me some tips? I would love to see what you do. Naruto shrugged. All right, what are you doing this Saturday? She beamed at him. Nothing at all, Naruto-kun. Would you like to join me and my mom for training? The smile slipped a bit. No, this is fine. I'll just impress him and his mom with my ability and we can have a real date later on. I mean, it's still more than Sasuke ever agreed to. That sounds great, Naruto-kun. I'd be happy to join you. Might want to reconsider that. Hinata spoke up. Their training sessions can be very extreme. She gave Hinata a smug smile. Have you trained with him? She nodded. I don't do all the exercises, but I do about half of them. Well, I'm sure that if you can handle half of them, I'll be able to do most of them. Hey Hinata-chan, why don't you come by Saturday too? We can all train together. Naruto said. Hinata looked at Ino and sent the girl a tiny grin. I'd like that, Naruto-kun. Great. I'll see both of you there at 7. Naruto said. In the morning. Ino said, startled. Naruto nodded. Be sure to have a big breakfast, you'll really need the energy and we won't stop until noon. Your workouts last 5 hours. The color began to drain from her face. Oh no, Ino, Naruto said. The workouts last 10 hours. 5 hours is as long as Hinata-chan can last. Is that a problem? Her smile looked a bit shaky, but she shook her head. Naruto, would you mind if we join you? Naruto looked up to see 3 girls all smiling at him and holding trays of food. He nodded and gave them all an inviting smile. The kids sure were friendly. But why did Hinata look so worried? Chapter 5. It's not a problem that I invited her, is it, Mom? Naruto asked as the 4 of them were heading back from the academy. No, honey, of course not. I want you to make friends. You are welcome to invite whoever you like home, just let me know. She stopped to pick up a couple of pebbles. Inviting friends over is fine. In a blur she threw the 2 pebbles at a large tree they were passing underneath. Ow, ow. 2 8-year-old girls dropped out of the tree onto the street. Kushina stood over them frowning with arms crossed. Why are you following us? Delona looked up in a panic for her life. Please don't kill us, she wailed. Kushina shut her eyes and shook her head. I'm not going to hurt you. But don't stalk my son. If he wants to see you after school, he'll invite you. But if he doesn't, I expect you to leave him be. We weren't stalking, Naruto-kun. We just wanted to see where he was going. Delona said. Did he know that? No. Delona said weakly. That's stalking, don't do it again. Now go. The 2 girls wasted no time running away. Kushina returned to her son's side. Tell me something, Naruto-kun, how many girls had lunch with you today? Not counting Hinata, 7. Well, it's official then, Kushina said in a flat voice. What? You have a fan club? She took out a kunai and tossed it at a trash can. The can flipped end over end, spilling garbage over the 8-year-old girl who had been hiding behind it. Eek! The girl shouted in terror. Go home and don't follow my son again. The girl fled. She gave her son a look that was amused and annoyed at the same time. My son, the heart throb. It's okay, Mom, I'll just tell the girls to leave me alone tomorrow. Kushina, Kurenai, and even Hinata looked at him as though he were an idiot. Naruto-kun, I really don't think that will do any good. Hinata said quietly. Why not? Because Naruto-kun, you're not a person to them, you're an ideal. Kushina said as she picked up another pebble. Huh. Kushina threw the pebble and a young girl in a yellow dress fell out of a tree. You, stalking, bad, don't. She shouted as the girl ran for her life. Now, as I was saying, except for Hinata, did any of those girls today really know you? I mean other than your name, your ambition, and the fact that you are already powerful. Well no, he said. Yet they're willing to risk a terrible and painful death. She shouted the last part and came to a halt. Every girl who has been following my son has until the count of 5 to get out of here before I take out my sword and start cutting off heads. 5. Immediately 6 different girls came out of their hiding places and began to run away screaming. She looked at her son. None of these girls actually think they're going to get you. So just telling them you're not interested won't help. You're an ideal to them now. An ideal. Kushina nodded. They look at you and see the perfect and unattainable. Being with you is a magical quest. They know the attempt is bound to fail, but they still want to try because you represent an ideal to these girls of everything they imagine they want in a boyfriend. They want to pursue you because in an odd way they think it brings them closer to this perfection they can never really have. So what can I do, Mom? Kushina frowned. Well, if you'd known what to do you might have nipped this in the bud. But I neglected to tell you how to handle things. She sighed. Unfortunately, now that the fan club has actually formed, you're left with only 2 options. One option would be to ruin the reputation you have now. You could answer every question wrong, try to be loud and obnoxious, start playing a bunch of annoying pranks, and maybe replace the Hokage cloak with a bright orange jumpsuit. Naruto looked at her in horror. Mom, don't even joke about that. Kushina grinned. Well, that leaves option 2. Get a girlfriend. What? Hinata thought. What? Naruto cried out. Mom, I thought I was trying to get the girls to leave me alone. Kushina nodded. That's the goal, Naruto-kun. How does having a girlfriend help with having girls chase after me? Simple, by having one girlfriend you immediately ruin the ideal all the other girls have. Even if you are unattainable, they still want to only chase boys who are unattached. If you have a girlfriend, that will take the steam out of most of the fangirls. Naruto frowned at her. I don't know, Mom. I mean, even if I wanted to, which girl would I pick? Kushina raised an eyebrow. Well, son, who would you feel comfortable spending time with, being alone with, and maybe even walking around hand in hand with? She glanced to where Naruto and Hinata were holding hands. Naruto seemed to struggle. That's just it, Mom. I don't feel comfortable with any of them. The only person in the whole class one feel comfortable around is Hinata-chan. Kushina just looked at her son blankly for a bit and waited. He didn't seem to get it. Finally she asked, who? Hinata-chan. She cupped a hand to her ear. Who? He frowned at her. I said Hinata-chan. I feel comfortable around Hinata-chan. And then the light seemed to come on. Oh, I could have Hinata-chan be my girlfriend. Kushina smiled. Why, Naruto-kun, what a wonderful idea. Asking the girl you know and trust. But Naruto frowned. I don't think it would work though. YN, not Naruto-kun. Hinata asked. He looked at her in surprise. Come on, Hinata-chan, can you see me as your boyfriend? Hinata hung her head and didn't bother to answer. Kushina looked on but decided to not say anything. If he doesn't see it, there's no point trying to force things. Well, they're both young. All good things in time. Well, Naruto-kun, I hope you enjoy being an ideal. Great. He began looking around, wondering if there were any more girls following him. Kushina picked up a pebble. Well, on the bright side, this should be good preparation for when you become Hokage. Most of the villagers never met your father, but they loved and idolized him. She threw the pebble into some bush in the front of a residence. Ow! The bush cried out, though the villagers didn't stalk him. XXXXXXXXXXX. They made it back to the Namikaze estates without saying much more. They also made it, running into only 2 more fangirls. Naruto-kun, go on in, I'll be a minute. Naruto nodded and went in through the gate. Once he was out of hearing, she turned to Hinata. Hinata-chan, I would like to talk to you for a minute. Kurenai looked at Kushina. Would you like some privacy? Kushina shook her head. I don't mind if you hear this, Kurenai. She smiled at Hinata. This will just be between us girls. What is it, Kushina? Hinata asked morosely. Kushina reached out and gently put a hand on each shoulder. Hinata-chan, don't give up on him. She looked surprised. What do you mean? Just what I said, don't give up on him or on the idea of being with him eventually. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but Naruto thinks the world of you. And I know just how deeply you care about him too. She sighed. Naruto-kun doesn't even see me as a potential girlfriend. Right now he doesn't, but Hinata-chan, you are both still so very young. Things can change with time. But the important thing is that today wasn't a decisive moment, so don't worry too much. Decisive moment. Kushina smiled kindly. In all of our lives, Hinata-chan, there come a certain number of decisive moments. These are crossroads in our life's journey. They are times when your life can move into one or another very different path. Would you like to hear about mine? Hinata nodded eagerly. Well, not too surprisingly, mine involved a certain man. Would you like to hear how Minato and I came to be? Oh yes, please. Well, he was in Whirlpool Country commanding a small force of leaf nins that were there to help us drive out some damn rock nins from our territory. I worked with him closely, and from the very start we flirted with one another mercilessly. She stopped and smiled fondly at the memory. Anyway, after a month the rock nins had been driven out and Minato was going to lead his men back home. We were saying our goodbyes. And as I was saying goodbye to him, I just knew it was a decisive moment in my life. He wasn't Hokage then, but he was the yellow flash of Konoha, a ninja legend, and the most beautiful man I ever laid eyes on. I knew that I would probably never see him again, and my heart ached at the thought. It was a decisive moment and I decided to follow my heart. What did you do? Hinata asked wide-eyed. Kushina's eyes warmed. I grabbed him and gave him the most passionate kiss of my life. Hinata gasped. You didn't. Kushina laughed. Oh yes, I did. And you should have seen the look on his face. But you see, Hinata-chan, everything else that happened, our falling in love, our marriage, and the birth of our son all started from that decision to follow my heart. I took a chance, and if I hadn't, then none of it would have happened. Do you understand what I am telling you, Hinata-chan? When your decisive moment comes, listen to your heart and follow its dictates, no matter how frightening. Hinata looked down again and began pressing her fingers together. Wah, what if you're not strong enough to follow your heart? Kushina paused for a bit and really regretted what she was about to say. Then you don't deserve him. Hinata gasped and her face shot back up. What? Kushina went down on her knees while keeping a gentle hold on Hinata's shoulders. Hinata-chan, you are a dear sweet child and I am very fond of you. I do not doubt that you will grow into a fine woman and one day be a fine wife. But Naruto-kun is no ordinary person. He is going to be an extraordinary man, just as his father was. And for such a man, an ordinary wife will never do. Until now his life has been hard and it will only get harder. There are things about him that you do not know, terrible things. Within him is an unlimited potential, not only for greatness but for the tragic as well. From the day of his birth until the day his life ends, his life will be a bitter struggle against enemies you cannot imagine, both within and without. I believe he will triumph in the end no matter the odds, because he has within him his father's courage. He has that rare strength to do what must be done whatever the cost. She paused for a bit and Hinata was entranced. She hung on every word. She knew this was vitally important. Kushina's green eyes bored into Hinata's lavender ones. When I took my marriage vows, I pledged everything to be with him. My life, my heart, my very soul, I offered everything I was and ever would be so I could be with the one I loved. For to be with a truly great man, nothing less would ever have been enough. Can you do the same, Hinata-chan? Can you pledge everything to be with him? Can you offer your life, your heart, and your very soul to stand beside him? Do you love him that much? Because if you cannot give him everything that you are and ever could be, then you do not deserve him. The little girl looked at her stunned and lost. Kushina, Shish. Kushina put a finger to her lips and shushed her. You don't have to answer me now. In fact, you don't have to answer me at all. But one day, Hinata-chan, likely years from now, your moment will come and you will have to answer then. She leaned forward and gave the small child a kiss on her forehead. Good night, Hinata-chan. I will see you in the morning. With that she left to return to her home and her son. Chapter 6. The first 3 weeks at the academy went well. Naruto found nothing hard in either Iruka's lessons or in Mizuki-sensei's. He excelled in all the subjects with relative ease. The truth was, there was nothing he was being taught that his mother had not already covered and gone far beyond. His mom had given him a crash course on girls and taught him how to be polite to them without encouraging them too much. Ultimately, he had decided not to get a girlfriend and simply endure the attention of most of his female classmates. At least the stalking had come to a stop after a couple days. His mom had taken out her sword and swung it around her head while unleashing a high-pitched and undulating battle cry. After that, the girls settled for showing him attention in the classroom. Ino maintained her flirtatious ways and Naruto put up with it more or less with good humor. Throughout, Hinata was always the one at his side. She had begun to train with him and his mom more. Hinata remained his absolute best friend, but he also began to make another close friend. XXXXXXXXXXX. Checkmate. A lazy boy said. Naruto sat back and studied the board for a moment. You surprised me. Want to play again? Shikamaru nodded. You know Naruto, I have to give you credit, you're the only one besides my dad who will play with me on a regular basis. You're also the only person besides him to ever beat me. He began to set the board up again. Naruto shrugged. I like playing with you, Shika. It's a challenge and the games help me develop my strategic thinking. He looked at him suspiciously. You know you are a lot smarter than you like to let on. Why don't you try harder? Or even try a little? I mean, you're the dead last in the class. Shikamaru sent him a disinterested look. So? Naruto frowned at him. So don't you want to be as good as you possibly can? Don't you want to be great? Too troublesome. I just want to be average. Why do you want to excel so much? Because I want to be the greatest Hokage Konoha has ever seen. He said almost automatically. Shikamaru smiled. Greatest? Wouldn't just being Hokage be enough for you? No, Naruto said seriously. My father was the hero who saved this village from the Kyuubi. He gave everything to save Konoha. I want to be like him and even greater. I love Konoha and its people and I want to protect them and keep them safe. And I want to be better than any who came before, otherwise what's the point? That won't leave you very much time for watching clouds or playing shogi. Shikamaru pointed out. No, but if I can keep Konoha safe I'll gladly make that sacrifice. Shikamaru smiled, spoken like a real Hokage. Would you boys like some cookies? She entered the game room with a tray. They're still hot. Thanks, Mom. Naruto said. Thank you. She smiled at the two boys. This was the first time he'd brought over a male friend. She chuckled thinking about the first time he'd brought over a female. XXXXXXXXX. 10 miles. Ino paled. Naruto smiled at her. It's a really good warm-up. Once you're done your body is warm and loose and you can hit the obstacle course. Obstacle course? Come on, I'll show you. He led her to the other side of the mansion and pointed out its features. You wade through the mud pit, go through the monkey bars, swim across the pond, chakra walk up the 100-foot tower, and then down the zip line. Ino looked at him uncomfortably and wondered what he would think if she told him she couldn't swim or chakra walk and really wasn't eager to go waist deep in mud. So we'll normally do the course 5 times. Then we'll start on the taijutsu sparring. Just so you know, my mom knows a few medical jutsus, so don't worry when you spar with her. She thought her heart stopped. Whoa, hold it. I'm going to spar your mother. I was sort of hoping to spar with you, Naruto-kun. Well, I'm sure you were, dear. Kushina said to her with a smile. But I want to see what you're made of. Don't worry, I probably won't break any bones, and if I do I'll get you the hospital very quickly. Naruto frowned at his mother. Mom, you said you would take it easy on her. Kushina shrugged. I said I wouldn't break any bones. Anyway, after that we usually break for an hour to eat lunch. After lunch we'll do basic exercises to build up strength and endurance. 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 crunches, 1,500 jumping jacks and 500 pull-ups. Ino stared at him and his mom, praying that they would burst out into laughter and tell her they were kidding. Then after that it's time for weapons training. My mom and I will work on sword work, but you're free to work on shuriken and kunai. Then we finish off with a relaxing 5-mile run. Ino stared at him. And this is your regular workout? He nodded. On days when I'm not in school. On school days I have a 3-hour workout. He frowned at his mother. I do more, but she doesn't want me to exhaust myself. So anyway, you ready to go? She grinned weakly. Sure. You ready, Hinata-chan? Of course, Naruto-kun. All right. Let's have a really great work out. Naruto said excitedly and led the 4 of them along the trail that ran around the estates. After about 100 yards. Ow. Oh, ow, ow. It hurts. Ino collapsed to the ground and grabbed at her ankle. Naruto was quickly kneeling at her side with Kushina and Hinata standing a bit behind him. What happened? Naruto asked. Oh, Naruto-kun, I am so sorry. But I twisted my ankle. Ino said bravely. Oh, that's too bad, Ino. Are you all right? Naruto sympathized. What incredible bad luck. Kushina said. It really is unbelievable. Hinata giggled. Naruto-kun, I hate to do this but I won't be able to work out with you. Would you mind carrying me home? She asked pleadingly. You know Ino, my mom could probably heal you. Naruto said. No. I mean, I don't want to trouble her. I think it would be best if you could just get me home. Well, okay, Ino. Naruto made to pick her up but his mom put her hand on his shoulder. Actually Naruto-kun is the adult, it's my responsibility to get her safely home. Kushina said. I would really prefer if Naruto-kun carried me. Ino pleaded. I am sure you would, dear. Kushina picked her up. You two continue on, I'll be back in a few minutes. She leapt away without even giving Ino a chance to say anything more. Naruto looked over to Hinata. Hinata-chan, why are you laughing? Oh, no reason, Naruto-kun. She tried but couldn't stop laughing. XXXXXXXXXX. Listen Naruto, I'm having a birthday next week. And even though it's troublesome, my parents are throwing me a party. You want to come? Both Naruto and his mom were taken by surprise and stared at him. Did I say something wrong? Shikamaru, Kushina said carefully. Do your parents know you wish to invite Naruto? Of course, he answered without concern. I wouldn't have asked him without being sure my mom wouldn't be troublesome. My folks say that if I want you to come, you're welcome. Naruto looked excitedly at his mom. Mom, can I? Kushina smiled and nodded. Of course, son. She looked to Shikamaru and actually gave him a slight bow. Shikamaru, thank you for extending this invitation to my son. XXXXXXXXXXX. Are you coming in with us, Mom? Naruto asked. Kushina smiled. She had of course escorted her son and Hinata to the Nara residence. No Naruto-kun, you and Hinata go in and have a good time, I'll be here when you're ready to return. With that she leapt away. They had each brought a gift and as they approached the front door they could hear the sound of music and the high-pitched laughter of children. As they stood ready to ring the bell, Hinata noticed something. Naruto-kun, you look nervous. I am Hinata-chan. This is the first time I've ever been invited to a friend's house. I mean, except for all the times I stayed at Hyuga. Hinata smiled easily. She found it to be an odd role reversal to be the confident one for a change. I have been to many formal dinners and functions, it'll be fine Naruto-kun. You have been invited and I know your manners are excellent. I guess you're right. He reached out and rang the doorbell. The door was opened a moment later by a man who looked like an older version of Shikamaru with some facial scars. Naruto and Hinata both bowed. Thank you for welcoming to your home Shikaku-san. His mother had been sure to inform him of the names of both of Shika's parents. Yes, Hinata added. We are both very happy to have been extended invitations to your son's birthday party. Shikaku gave them both an easy grin. No need to be so formal, you can call me Shikaku. Come on in, you are both welcome. They entered hand in hand. Most of their classmates were already there. The girls who were there immediately noticed him entering with his usual Hokage cloak. As the girls swarmed towards him, he tightened his grip on Hinata's hand. Please don't leave me, Hinata-chan. He whispered to her, not wanting to be trapped by a pack of them. Hearing him say those words, she blushed a bit and smiled. I won't leave you, Naruto-kun. XXXXXXXXXX. Wow. Delona said dreamily. Beautiful. Another girl cooed. So graceful. Ino sighed. Oh, he's not that good. An annoyed Sakura said. Sasuke is a much better dancer. Oh yeah. Ino smirked. How would you even know, forehead? I haven't seen him dance. He said he might dance with me later. Sakura said defensively. Don't hold your breath. Ino said flatly. Stung, Sakura shot back. Oh yeah, Ino pig, well I haven't seen him dance with you yet. The only one he has danced with is Hinata. I know. Ino frowned. She really wanted to dance with him. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata had never enjoyed herself so much at a party. The formal functions she went to as part of her responsibility as the Hyuga heir were always dry, boring, and lifeless. The only parties she had ever attended that she had really enjoyed were Naruto's birthday parties. And this was better because they had never danced before. Dancing had never been a part of those celebrations. But here a space had been cleared in the living room and music was playing loudly. All the girls wanted to dance with him. But he did not really feel comfortable with anyone but her, and so the two of them danced exclusively. And she had discovered he was a marvelous dancer. She knew why, of course. She had watched him train with his sword many, many times. Unlike using kunai or shuriken, a large part of using a sword effectively was proper footwork. The fighting styles were actually called dances, and he had mastered one of them, the dance of the camellia. Watching the way he could move and flow with his sword was beautiful, and those movements transferred well to the dance floor. She had never danced with him before and just loved the shared movement and the feel of all his attention focused solely on her. As they danced, the song they were listening to ended. The next song was a slow one. The two of them stopped for a moment and looked around. There were 6 other couples dancing when the song came on. 4 of them decided to leave the dance floor. The other 2 danced close with the boy holding the girl around her back just above her hips. Hinata expected he would want to take a break from dancing. But instead Naruto grabbed her around her hips and pulled her close. Eek! The sound came out of her before she could stop it. Naruto gave her a look of surprise. Is something wrong, Hinata-chan? No, Naruto-kun. He shrugged and pulled her close like the other 2 couples who were dancing. It took her just a moment to settle down being so close to him, but she slowly did and put her head down on his shoulder. Once she did manage to calm down, she sort of regretted having her big beige coat on. She shut her eyes and just relaxed as they slowly moved in rhythm to the music. She let out a contented sigh. Naruto-kun. XXXXXXXXXX. Sakura saw the way Ino was looking at the 2 of them. Jealous much, Ino pig? Ino gave her a nasty grin. Isn't it time for you to go up to Sasuke and get ignored again? Ino looked back at the 2 of them. Well, aren't they cute, but it won't last. She is not his type. XXXXXXXXXXX. Why are you smiling like that? Naruto asked suspiciously. Like what, Naruto-kun? His mother asked innocently. They had dropped off Hinata and were going up the walkway to the front door. Like you know something? Naruto accused. Like what? I don't know. Kushina patted her son's shoulder. Naruto-kun, really, are you suspicious of your own mother? He looked a bit embarrassed. No, of course not, I'm sorry. Mom. That's all right, son, I forgive you. She opened the front door and they both entered the mansion. By the way, son, you and Hinata made the cutest couple on the dance floor. His mom gave him a huge smile. Mom, you were spying on me. Naruto accused. I prefer to call it protective surveillance. XXXXXXXXXX. They were gathered in the dojo. After making certain all the students at least knew the basics, Mizuki had told them it was time for them to begin sparring one another. The academy was designed to foster competition. The students were encouraged to develop their individual excellence. Teamwork was also important, of course, and there were team-building exercises as well. But the atmosphere was deliberately kept competitive. All right everyone, to begin with we will have the boys fight the boys and then the girls will fight each other. Mizuki announced. Once we have a pecking order of the strongest and weakest in each group, we will begin having the boys and girls fight each other as well. Now I want all of you to fight as hard as you can. Keep in mind that someday you will have to fight for your lives. Do not get into the habit of holding back. I want all of you to do your absolute best. He smiled at all of them. With that in mind, we are not here to deliberately hurt anyone. If someone is hurt during the match, no one will find any fault with that. But please do not strike a fallen or unconscious opponent. If I tell you to stop, do so immediately and take a couple steps back. Also, if you see blood, please halt. As he'd known it would, the last comment got their attention. Most looked just a little bit uncomfortable. Mizuki knew that was good. Up until now most of them had only sparred with family or friends who held back from hurting them. It was time for them to fight with the understanding that they could be hurt. Time to toughen them up a little bit. Some of them didn't seem at all bothered or worried. Kiba was grinning and looked eager to scrap. Sasuke just smirked, probably thinking no one here was good enough to touch him. Naruto didn't change at all. He had the usual confident look about him. All right demon, let's test you. Naruto and Kiba, please come forward. The 2 boys did so and took positions across from one another on the mat. Bow to one another. The boys gave each other respectful bows. Assume a fighting stance. Kiba took up a normal taijutsu stance. Naruto put one foot a bit in front and the other a little behind and out to the side. One hand he held out in front of his face and the other behind his head near his ear. Kiba sent him a look. What's with the weird stance? It's the starting position for crane style. He replied simply. All right, begin. Eager Kiba ran straight in trying to launch a strong if slightly clumsy attack. Naruto took a quick sidestep, reached out and punched the back of his head. Kiba stumbled forward and fell face down on the mat unconscious. The match was ended in less than 10 seconds. Very well done, Naruto. Really impressive. Mizuki gave the boy a big encouraging smile. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and returned the smile. He liked Mizuki-sensei. XXXXXXXXXX. The girls were standing in a group a bit separate from the boys. They all watched as Naruto walked triumphantly off the mat. Ino sighed. He is so amazing, I so love him. No you don't, Ino. The girl next to her said. She instantly turned and glared at the girl. What did you say, Hinata-chan? Hinata calmly faced the irate blonde. I said you don't love him. She felt strangely comfortable and did not stutter or stumble over her words. You don't even really know him. To you he's just some ideal. The other girls all quieted down and listened to the two of them. Oh, so I suppose you know him better? Ino demanded. I've known Naruto-kun my whole life. She said simply. And I can't remember a time when I didn't love him. Ino sneered. Too bad you two are just friends. Hinata's eyes went to the floor. Maybe that'll change one day. Sensing an advantage, she pushed it. Yeah, right. You are so not his type. I mean, seriously, do you think he'll end up with a quiet little mouse like you? Hinata's eyes came back up and she sent Ino a hard look she had never suspected the quiet girl even capable of. I'm not a mouse. I'm a kunoichi and heir to one of the strongest clans in Konoha. And even if I am a little shy, Ino, never think that means I'm scared. Oh yeah, you really think you'll end up with him? I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever be strong enough to deserve someone like Naruto-kun. But I've decided that I want to be someone who would be worthy of his love. I've started working hard to become such a person and I'll continue to work towards that goal. Because to me Naruto-kun is worth that sacrifice, he is the one I love and the one who gives me courage. Well, I'm going to get stronger too. And there's no way I'll lose Naruto-kun to you. Hinata shook her head. This isn't a competition. Huh. That just shows what you know. When it comes to getting the boy you want, it's always a competition and I intend to win. Hinata frowned at her. Is that all Naruto-kun is to you? The prize in a contest? Are you really that shallow? What? She began shaking her fist. What did you just call me, you little mouse? Is there a problem? Mizuki asked. Mizuki-sensei, I want to fight her right now. Mizuki looked at her in surprise. Usually it was the boys who developed grudges and demanded to settle them in a spar. He had planned to finish with the boys first, but if Ino was this adamant, it would be better to get this out of the way. Do you have an objection, Hinata? She shook her head. No, Mizuki-sensei. He shrugged. Very well, both of you come forward and take your positions. Hinata took a step and halted. She thought for a moment and came to a decision. She unzipped her beige jacket and left it on the floor. XXXXXXXXXXX. The boys were all watching as Ino and Hinata took their positions on the mat. This was the very first time any of them had seen her without a jacket. Even Naruto had not seen her without that jacket since she started wearing it about half a year ago. Hey! Kiba shouted. Hinata's got ta-tush. Almost immediately Kiba was grabbed around the collar and was yanked forward until he was nose to nose with a very angry Naruto. What did you just say, dog boy? Naruto growled. Kiba gulped and felt the urge to whimper and turn up his belly. Nothing. Naruto let him loose and turned back to the girls. Wow. Hinata-chan has ta-tush. XXXXXXXXXXX. Having bowed to one another, Ino smiled. Naruto's watching us. I know. Assume a fighting stance. Mizuki commanded. Ino snapped into a standard Goken stance. Byakugan, activating her bloodline. The veins near her eyes popped up, giving her a suddenly fearsome look. She dropped into a Juken fighting stance. Ino suddenly looked to Mizuki. Hey, is that allowed? Is there a problem, Ino? I told all of you to fight to the best of your ability, and Gentle Fist is the fighting style of the Hyuga. But I didn't think she could actually use it. Ino felt just a little worried. She'd heard of Gentle Fist and it was one of Konoha's strongest fighting styles. Mizuki frowned at her. Surprises and false assumptions are a part of ninja life. Consider this a valuable lesson for the future. Maybe you should twist your ankle. Hinata said sweetly. Ino glared at the girl. Woohoo! Kick her ass, Hinata-chan. Naruto shouted. Hinata smiled happily. Watch me, Naruto-kun. All right, Mizuki spoke. Begin. XXXXXXXXXXX. She did IB on Burbos. Ino got out as she pressed the bloodied cloth to her nose. Hinata bowed. I apologize, Ino, I did not intend to break your nose. Ino glared at her, clearly not believing it. Mizuki shook his head. Hinata, you have nothing to apologize for. Bloodshed is inevitable when there is conflict. He looked at all the boys and girls. Take a good look and get used to the sight. If you become ninja you will see it often. Ino, go to the medic nin's office, you are dismissed from the remainder of this session. Mizuki got back to the spars. About 20 minutes later another Chunin instructor arrived and spoke quietly to Mizuki. Mizuki listened and then called out. Naruto. The academy administrator wishes to speak with you. Please go with Larm. Naruto nodded. Yes, Mizuki-sensei. XXXXXXXXXX. He followed the Chunin instructor out of the dojo and down one of the halls. Naruto quickly noticed something. I beg pardon, Larm-sensei, but isn't the administration office the other way? Larm shot Naruto a hard look. The administrator wished to speak with you somewhere else. Why? Naruto asked curiously. I don't know, I'm simply following orders, now come along and don't ask questions. Naruto didn't appreciate the tone but nevertheless followed. They went up to the third floor where the fourth-year students were being taught. As they went down the hall, Naruto noted all the classrooms seemed to be empty. The senior students were all outside doing their physical training. Larm came to a stop and so did Naruto. The Chunin pointed to room 315. The administrator is in there waiting for you. Naruto remained exactly where he was. Well, what are you waiting for? Naruto had a hand on his belt. With one finger he pressed a button there, activating his radio communicator. The microphone was in the collar of his bodysuit, so anything he said would go out so long as the communicator was in the send position. Pardon me, but just why are we here on the third floor standing in front of room 315 again? He asked casually. Larm frowned at him. I've already told you the administrator wishes to speak with you. Yes, but you haven't said why. You are being insolent. Do not keep the administrator waiting. Actually, would you mind asking him to come out and talk to me in the hall? Don't be ridiculous. Now get in that room right now or you will be in a great deal of trouble. Naruto looked at the man's eyes. He saw fear and a mounting panic there. He saw a bead of sweat run down the side of his face. His eyes twitched nervously toward the door. You're lying, Naruto said quietly. In an instant he was dodging and pulling his sword out as Larm threw a pair of kunai at him and cried out. The door to the room opened and 4 men came out, all of them holding knives. Larm launched himself forward with a kunai in each hand. Naruto was on his feet and began the dance of the camellia. He took advantage of his height. He slid forward underneath his opponent's kunai strike. He drove his sword up and in with all his might, aiming for the zipper that was in his Chunin vest. The sword struck and with savage might he drove the blade all the way through. Larm cried out as he was skewered. Naruto yanked his sword back out again and took a couple steps back as the Chunin pitched forward, dead or soon to be dead. His blood was spreading away from him. The 4 men who had come storming out of the room all came to a sudden halt at the sight they were confronted by. Their Chunin ally lying still on the floor in a pool of his own blood. Meanwhile their intended target was standing there with a bloodied sword, eyeing them with a frightening calm. Is something wrong? He asked pleasantly. It's a little late for second thoughts. The men all looked at each other, clearly frightened and unsure of what they should do. Well, if you really want we can just stand here and wait another minute and a half for my mom to arrive. As he'd known it would, that settled them. They rushed at him with a shout, waving their knives about. He waited for them like a wolf waiting for some rabbits. It took 4 sword strokes and 2 steps to deal with them. It's over, Mom. He switched the communicator to receive. Naruto, are you all right? His mother's panic-stricken voice came over the link. I'm fine, Mom, he assured her. Are you still near room 315? Yes, Mom. Stay there. I'll be with you in just a minute. Oh, okay, Mom. He switched off the radio. Now he could try and slow down his heartbeat. He looked down at the bodies of the 5 men he had slaughtered. As he took out a rag and started leaning his sword, he wondered why they hated him so much. Chapter 7. Naruto. Kushina turned the corner of the hall and saw him. He looked back at her and spoke in an eerily calm voice. Hi, Mom. Then he turned back around. He was looking at his handiwork. 5 men were scattered along the floor in front of him, their blood still flowing out and growing into a larger and larger pool. She ran up to her son and took him in a fierce embrace. "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" He slowly shook his head. "I'm fine mom, not a scratch on me." When she let go of him he stood where he was and continued to look at the bloody scene. She understood. Carefully taking his face in her hands she turned him around so his back was to the men. "Naruto, you did what you had to, what I have trained you to. If you had not done what you did these men would have gladly killed you. You have nothing to feel ashamed of or guilty about." She spoke to him gently. He nodded. "I know that mom, I do. And when I was doing it, I was fine. It was just like training. I didn't see people, I just saw targets and I hit the targets. But now," he gulped and looked down ashamed. "I understand Naruto-kun. To be shinobi is a hard thing, and to be forced to be one so young is even harder. In many ways son, I wish you could have a different life. But for you Naruto-kun there is no choice, you must walk the path of the shinobi." "What did you say your sensei's very first lesson was?" He looked up again. She was not surprised to see some tears there. Iruka's sensei said that the path of the shinobi was the path of death and glory. That we must always be ready to kill or die to protect our village. That is what it means to be shinobi. He sighed. "It's the same thing that you and Nisan have told me. I understand it, it's just. The reality is never how you imagine it to be," she said simply. She gently wiped his tears away and smiled at him proudly. "Taking a life should never be done without cause. When we kill we do so in self-defense or in the service of our village. That is what separates us from common murderers or bandits. So long as when you act it is under one of those two circumstances, do not doubt that your actions are just." "Does it get easier?" he asked. She nodded. "It does. In time you will learn to simply kill and not feel." He shuddered a bit. "That sounds horrible." She slowly nodded. "In a way it is, but Naruto-kun, do you want to feel this every time you are forced to kill? Could you bear it? Kakashi and I have both killed many in our times and I think we are both good people with good hearts. But if we could not turn our heart off when we needed to we would go mad." He looked at her unhappily. "You turn your hearts off?" Kushina nodded. "We learn not to feel at those times. It is the only way to do it and stay sane." "Mom, it sounds kind of inhuman." "It is son, but if you are a shinobi you cannot always afford to be human." She hugged him again and kissed him. "Do not misunderstand me. I do not mean to deaden your heart all the time, for that is just as bad as feeling too much. Be human, love, laugh, and even cry when your heart tells you to. But learn to be only shinobi when the time calls for it." Naruto looked at her and slowly nodded. "I think I understand." "Good." She took a hold of his arm and led him away and down another hall out of sight of what had happened. She took on a fierce look. "Let's go find your sensei who was supposed to be watching out for you." XXXXXXXXXXX. His mother had been absolutely livid that her son had been attacked at the academy by an instructor. She had demanded that Mizuki be discharged for incompetence for allowing her son to go to an assassination attempt. But Naruto had defended his sensei, pointing out that all Mizuki had done was agree to a reasonable request from a fellow instructor. Kushina had then demanded she be allowed to remain in the class to watch over him. The Hokage explained that he could not allow such an extreme disruption to affect an entire class. So ultimately Kushina was faced with the choice of either allowing Naruto to remain in the academy under the current circumstances, or of allowing him to take the graduation exam and beginning his shinobi career immediately. Kushina was not interested in this second option. Not only because she wanted him to continue to build more friendships but because she wanted to delay his becoming a ninja as long as possible. As dangerous as life in Konoha was for him, she knew the danger would only increase once he began going on missions to foreign countries. She wanted him as strong and ready as possible before that day came. So in the end Naruto remained in class. The Hokage did agree to keep an Anbu squad on duty near the academy whenever he was there. Kushina was not the only parent upset by the attack. Most of the other parents were also irate and, not surprisingly, blamed Naruto for being the cause. Most of the parents petitioned the Hokage to have Naruto removed from the class. The Hokage refused to punish him for being attacked while on the academy grounds. The parents then demanded that their children be placed in a different class. This demand was also refused as there were no other first-year classes available. The Hokage did agree that the students could be pulled out and allowed to repeat the opening course the following fall. A couple parents did this, but the others declined as it would mean wasting a full year of their children's education and ninja careers. For the students, the fact that Naruto had actually killed a Chunin settled his standing in their eyes. He was, as Kiba liked to say, the pack leader. The only ones unwilling to acknowledge this fact were Sasuke and Sakura. As the semester continued, the pecking order became clear and was best symbolized by the weekly sparring matches. Naruto never lost. Sasuke never lost, except to Naruto. Hinata was clearly the most powerful kunoichi, and her swift and crippling Juken strikes completely overwhelmed all the girls and nearly all the boys as well. She never defeated Naruto, but she very nearly managed to beat Sasuke once. The top 3 slots in the class were cemented. As for his social skills, the girls, with the glaring exception of Sakura, were still infatuated with him. Ino was even more eager to be with him than before, though she never again offered to train with him. She tried finding ways to spend time with him outside of class, but Naruto declined. Hinata continued to train with him as much as she could and still worked on improving her Juken. She remained the one at his side. Naruto made 2 additional male friends. Kiba liked him because he recognized him as pack leader and admired his strength and leadership. Choji was also drawn in, mostly thanks to Shikamaru. He was invited to and attended Kiba's birthday party. This he found quite fun as he got to play with all the Inuzuka dogs. As the fall semester drew to its close, he was doing well. But as he was always aware, not everyone loved him. XXXXXXXXXX. Hello little brother. A casual voice greeted him. Nisan. Sasuke smiled. What are you doing here? My duties are done for the day and so I decided to stop by the academy. Great. We can go train together. As he spoke, his classmates continued to exit the academy. One particular student in a rather eye-catching cloak drew his attention. As was his habit, he sent the student a hard look. Seeing this, the particular student returned the look with a smile and a wave of his hand. Itachi did not miss the interaction. He also had no trouble guessing the student's identity given his appearance. Is that Namikaze Naruto? Yeah. Sasuke's voice dripped venom. Itachi lifted an eyebrow. You do not care for him. He's a pretender who is always showing off to get attention. Really? Hitaki Kakashi speaks of him often and is lavish in his praise. That brought a scowl to Sasuke's face. Everyone says that. Iruka, Mizuki, and everyone in the class. He's not that good. Sasuke spoke with a rare vehemence. Itachi looked down at him. He seems to bring out a rare passion in you, little brother. Tell me, is it true he has mastered both shadow clones and summoning? Yes, Sasuke said flatly. He didn't like remembering how the little pretender had shown him up on the very first day of class. Can we stop talking about him now? Wait here a moment. Nisan, where are you going? I think I would like to meet him. Itachi replied. Sasuke could only stand there and watch as his revered older brother went over and talked to the little pretend Hokage. XXXXXXXXXX. Pardon me. A polite voice called. The 4 of them had just been leaving the academy grounds. Kushina brought them to a halt. The ninja approaching was vaguely familiar. You're Uchiha Itachi. Kushina said carefully. She did not have a good opinion of the Uchihas. Naruto seemed to have developed a strong dislike for Sasuke, though he refused to share any details with her. And she had never forgiven Fugaku for being the one leading the baying for Naruto's blood. I met you once at the tower. I remember. He offered her a slight bow. But then who could forget meeting the famed Namikaze Kushina? The 2 of them eyed one another warily and with a mutual respect. They had much in common. They were both powerful shinobi who took pride in their uncommon skill. They also shared the basic Anbu philosophy of doing whatever it took to get the job done. But there was one core difference between them. Itachi sought out personal excellence with a calm detachment. He deliberately attempted to deaden or otherwise ignore his emotions. To Itachi, feelings were detriments, they were obstacles to be overcome so that one could learn what one was truly capable of. Kushina was in that respect his opposite. She used her brain to set her strategy and figure out the best way to achieve it. But it was always her heart that guided her steps. Everything she had done, everything she had endured had been for the sake of love, her love for her husband and later her son. To Kushina her emotions were her reason for being and what gave her life meaning. Perhaps sensing what they had in common and what they did not, they stood there eyeing each other like a pair of lions in a cage. "And how can I help you, Itachi?" Kushina asked, cautiously. "Actually," he lowered his gaze. "I wanted to meet your son. This is Naruto." Itachi's interest in her son gave her a small chill. She stood directly behind him and placed a hand on each shoulder. "He is, Naruto. This is Uchiha Itachi. He is Sasuke's older brother, the heir to the Uchiha clan, and an Anbu captain." Naruto nodded to him respectfully. "I am pleased to meet you, Itachi-san. I am also quite pleased to meet you, Naruto." He tilted his head. "May I call you Naruto-kun?" Naruto shrugged. "If you like. Does that mean I can call you Itachi-kun?" He gave a single nod. "You may. Tell me, might I take a closer look at you?" That was a very odd request, but Naruto nodded. "All right." Itachi went down to one knee and put his face on Naruto's level and about 2 feet away. He shut his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again his pupils were both red. "The Sharingan," Naruto said. "You've seen it before." Itachi sounded a little surprised. "Where?" "Kakashi Nisan showed me his." Itachi nodded. "Yes, that would make sense. Why are you looking at me with your Sharingan? I'm not performing a jutsu or anything." Naruto felt just a little bit like squirming. "Whenever I use my Sharingan I always feel like I can see more clearly. I am curious to truly see you." "What do you see?" Naruto asked, a bit interested. Itachi tilted his head a bit. "A mystery." He paused a bit. "Sasuke does not like you." Naruto frowned. "I don't like him either. I think he's an arrogant jerk." "Naruto." Kushina scolded. "That is quite all right. I find his blunt truthfulness refreshing." Itachi sent him a sliver-thin smile. "Too many people only speak the truth when it is convenient. It speaks well of you that you can speak it even when it is not so. Though you will need to learn when to speak and when to say nothing at all." "Tell me something, Naruto-kun. Do you know why so many people in this village hate you?" Both he and Kushina stiffened a bit. "Why are you asking him that?" Kushina asked frostily. "I have always been curious why the son of Konoha's greatest hero should be so despised by so many. I have always found that fact to be an enigma. I suspect that there is a reason. I have asked my father and others but no one would give me any information. I don't know why people hate me. It has never made any sense to me. I've just kind of come to accept it," Naruto said. Itachi lifted his gaze a bit to look at Kushina. "And you, Kushina, do you know why your son is hated by those his father saved?" Kushina glared at him and tightened her grip on her son's shoulders just a bit. Did Itachi know? How old would he have been on that night? 8, 9. Would Fugaku have told him the truth before the Sandaime passed his law? She couldn't very well ask him directly, and she damn well wasn't going to ask Fugaku. "What sort of game are you playing?" "I'm very sorry but I'm afraid I don't know either." Itachi looked at her intently. "You are lying." Naruto looked at her. "Mom. Damn you. Itachi, are you actually calling me, Namikaze Kushina, clan head of the Namikaze, a liar?" A little bit of threat lay underneath the words. "Yes," he said calmly. He looked to Naruto again. "As you can see, Naruto-kun, telling inconvenient truths is indeed uncommon. If you think I will remain here and be insulted by you, Itachi, you are sadly mistaken. We have wasted enough time. Let's go." She quickly got them moving while keeping her hold on her son. "Goodbye, Naruto-kun, I am pleased to have met you." Naruto sent him back a confused look but said nothing. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto waited until they had returned home and he and his mother were alone. "Mom," he spoke in a small voice. "Yes, dear." He took a deep breath. "Why do people hate me?" She looked at her son and tried not to show the panic she felt. "Dear, you heard me tell Itachi I didn't know." "Mom, I saw your eyes, you were lying." He paused. "And I can see you're lying now. I taught him too damn well." She felt a certain melancholy pride that her son was not someone who could be easily fooled. Well, by adults, he still needs to work on reading 8-year-old girls. She looked into her son's eyes. She could see his confusion and panic. "He's not ready yet." She took a deep breath. "Son, have I ever done anything to put you in danger or hurt you?" He looked shocked. "No, of course not." She knelt down before him and put her hands gently about his face. "And you know that I love you, don't you?" "Yes, Mom, of course I know that." She nodded. Son, do you trust that whatever I do to try and protect you? That I always act in what I think is your best interest? He nodded vigorously. Yes. Then I am going to ask you to trust me now. Please don't ask me any more about this. When the time comes I will explain everything, I promise. Why was she so nervous? That was not something he'd seen in her face often. She'd made a promise to him though, and he knew he could trust that. All right Mom, I'll trust you to tell me when you think the time is right. Thank you dear. She pulled him into a hug and gave him a big kiss on his cheek. Obviously relieved. Naruto trusted his mother absolutely. But she'd taught him to look underneath the underneath. He couldn't help but wonder why she'd been so relieved at not telling him. What could be that bad? XXXXXXXXXXX. They had just about reached their home in the middle of the Uchiha compound when Itachi finally broke the silence. You've been very quiet Sasuke. Normally you'd be pleading with me to train with you. It never does any good so why bother? Sasuke said bitterly. Itachi looked him over. Does it bother you that I spoke to Naruto? No. Itachi sighed. If you truly intend to be a ninja Sasuke you will have be far better at deception. Maybe you can give me some lessons on that after you get done hanging out with that pretender. Sasuke hurried inside not really wanting anything more to do with his Nissen at the moment. Itachi watched him hurry inside. Interesting, he said softly. Chapter 8. At the end of the semester they received their grades. And as was traditional along with the grades they received their class rankings. I am so proud of you Naruto-kun. Kushina grabbed her son and began planting kisses all over his face. Mom stop. Naruto tried to sound indignant but she couldn't miss that very happy smile. My son, top in his class 1 I'm very, very proud of you. I'll tell you what, let's celebrate. Is there anything special you'd like to celebrate your achievement? She saw his face light up and his mouth open. Not a katana, ask for something else. But why can't I have a katana? He whined. Because you're not ready for one. Kushina said plainly. When will I be ready? When I say you are. He crossed his arms over his chest. Stingy. She shook her head. You're not getting a katana son, pick something else. Well can I have some of your special ramen? She hugged him and gave him 3 or 4 more kisses. Now that you can have. I'll go ahead and make you all the special ramen you can eat. XXXXXXXXXXX. Sasuke stood before his father as he looked at his son's academic report. History, 2nd. Codes, 2nd. Math, 2nd. Taijutsu, 2nd. Weapons, 2nd. Endurance, 3rd. Sasuke flinched at the very slight inflection his father added to that one word. Overall standing, 2nd. Fugaku looked down at his young son. You disappoint me. Fugaku dropped the paper and walked away from him. Sasuke picked it up off the floor and slowly tore it up. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hinata stood stock still in front of her father. He was sitting behind his desk and carefully reviewing her report. Despite an overwhelming urge to press her fingers together she stood there with hands firmly to her side. Finally he looked up from the paper and at her. She prepared herself for another tongue lashing. You were 3rd, he said in a neutral tone. Yes father, she said in a small voice. She kept her face up. A Hyuga was not supposed to ever look away from the person addressing them. She waited in dread for what was coming. Given that you trail only an Uchiha and a Namikaze, I find your performance acceptable. You do. She sounded relieved. That immediately brought out a frown on her father's face. Do not misunderstand me daughter. He said in a frosty tone. You should be first in all things. He paused. However, to trail members of the other 2 elite clans of this village is understandable. His eyes considered her, weighed her, and judged her. You have improved Hinata, perhaps you will make a worthy clan head one day. The tone was no warmer but compared to what she was used to his words were welcome. Arigato father. You have been training recently with Naruto. Yes father. I wish you to spend more time training with him and following his regimen. I have spoken to Kushina-san and she welcomes your increased participation. For the first time she could remember she wore a smile while in an audience with her father. XXXXXXXXXXX. The next morning Sasuke was on the asphalt outside the academy waiting patiently. He watched as Kushina and Kurenai delivered the pretender and his pet Hyuga. He snorted in contempt. He didn't need any help to get to and from the academy each day. Yet those two were always treated with kid gloves. He watched as Kushina and Kurenai departed and as the pretender and his little girlfriend started toward the academy hand in hand. He walked out to meet them, coming to a stop directly in their path. Naruto and Hinata halted. Naruto looked at him with his usual air of confidence. "Do you want something, Sasuke?" Naruto said in that chipper tone he always used to Sasuke. It sounded more irritating than nails on a chalkboard. He clenched his fists. "Fight me." As if by magic, as soon those words were spoken, all the kids in the courtyard began to gather around them. Naruto just smiled. "Say what? You heard me, pretender. I want you to fight me right here and now." Naruto's smile slowly grew. He let go of Hinata's hand and signaled her to step away. She looked at him a bit worried but did so and joined the circle of kids who were eagerly anticipating a fight. "Can't you wait until Friday? I'd be happy to kick your ass then. No more damn spars. I want a real fight. Come at me with everything you have and I'll show what an Uchiha can really do." Naruto's smile slipped and thinned and took on a little bit of a feral look to it. "If I did that, Sasuke, I'd kill you in about 30 seconds. With that he calmly began to saunter past the furious Uchiha. "Don't turn your back on me." On sheer instinct Sasuke pulled out a kunai and launched himself at Naruto's back. Naruto felt killer intent and acted on his own instinct. Swinging back around he caught Sasuke's wrist with the kunai in it. With a hard twist he snapped it and the kunai dropped from the hand. Sasuke's rash move gave his body momentum. All Naruto did was add to it by pulling him forward. He stuck one leg out and tripped him, sending the proud Sasuke spilling to the ground. Immediately he twisted about to get back to his feet. He froze at the sight and feel of Naruto's blade at his throat. He could also feel Naruto's killer intent. Naruto was standing over him. Looking down, Sasuke was the only one with a clear view of Naruto's face. He bit down to keep from gasping. Naruto's eyes were red and slitted like some animals. Given the angle of his face, Sasuke was the only one who could see it. "Don't ever attack me again, Sasuke." Naruto's tone was low and fierce and very, very serious. "I'm not like you, I don't have time for stupid little playground brawls. When anyone attacks me for any reason my sword comes out. And when it comes out it draws blood. If you ever attack me again, Sasuke, you had better really mean it, because I might not be able to hold back. And while I have your full attention, let me explain something to you. I don't give a damn that you're an Uchiha. As for you proving what you're capable of, I can tell you what that is, second best. As long as I'm here that's all you'll be, Sasuke, so get used to it." He finally put his sword up. As Sasuke watched, his eyes again became blue. He was sure that no one else had noticed. Even Naruto didn't seem to have realized it. With a thought, Naruto ran his left palm over his blade, slicing it open. He quickly wiped off his own blood and holstered his sword. With that he walked off towards the classroom. Sasuke lay there defeated and humiliated, with virtually the entire class to bear witness to it. The entire class and a few more. XXXXXXXXXX. Itachi saw the little encounter and nodded his head in approval. His foolish little brother had initiated an encounter with a foe that had beaten him regularly. He had done so expecting to win merely because he had Uchiha blood. That was typical of the attitude of the entire clan. They had given up trying to achieve individual excellence and instead relied on the comforting thought that they were superior merely due to birth. Such arrogance was dangerous and led to the sort of disaster his little brother had just encountered. Now Naruto was different. He came from a great clan and had excellent blood as well. Yet Naruto refused to be satisfied merely with his legacy. He pushed himself mercilessly to achieve power and gain greater skill. He was too passionate. Like his mother, he had never come to understand that emotions only fostered weakness. Yet his drive to succeed was truly impressive. "You are very interesting, Naruto-kun." XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina smiled. For once her habit of performing protective surveillance had yielded something interesting. Sasuke was still a child trying to fight a playground fight. Naruto was becoming a ninja and fought like one whenever he was attacked regardless of the circumstances. He'd also had sufficient self-control not to kill the pompous little Uchiha. Once he was inside, she finally headed home well pleased. XXXXXXXXXX. He is so cool. Ino practically shouted and the other girls all agreed. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata was by his side and looking at his left hand. Naruto-kun, why did you hurt yourself? He gave her a comforting smile. Oh, it's an Uzumaki clan tradition that once a sword is drawn in combat it cannot be holstered until it has drawn blood. He chuckled. And as tempting as it was, I didn't think it would be a good idea for me to cut that second best. But you've hurt yourself, Hinata said worriedly. He continued to smile. Don't worry about it, Hinata-chan. I always heal fast, by the time we get to class my wound should be closed up. And sure enough, as they were sitting down a couple minutes later, he showed her his left palm was no longer bleeding and almost completely healed. Hinata was glad his hand was all right, but she wondered about something. Naruto-kun, you shouldn't be able to heal that fast without using a medical jutsu. Naruto just shrugged, not worried about it. What can I tell you, Hinata-chan, I've always healed fast. Hinata considered that. Naruto-kun, do you think you might have a bloodline limit? He looked at her intrigued by the thought, but shook his head. Nope, there are no bloodline limits in either the Namikaze or Uzumaki clans. Hinata nodded and let it go, at least for now. XXXXXXXXXXX. Ruruka looked out at the class as they took their seats. There was quite a bit more conversation going on than usual. He noticed that Sasuke was the last one to arrive. To his surprise, a few of his students were pointing to him and seeming to make some jokes. Sasuke sat down and pointedly ignored the attention he was receiving. All right class, settle down please. I have an important announcement to make before we begin. He waited a moment for the kids to finally quiet. All right class, 1 have permission slips that all of you will have to bring home and have signed. What are they for, Uruka-sensei? Sakura asked. Uruka gave them all a smile. This weekend you will be going on your first field trip. We will be conducting a 2-day survival exercise in the woods outside the village. We're going outside the walls. Kiba said excitedly. Uruka nodded. Yes we will, though it will only be a short distance away. Sounds troublesome. Shikamaru lifted his head from his desk. Can't we just do this at one of the village training grounds? Uruka frowned at his worst student. No, each of you will be placed in a separate section of forest and expected to find water, food, and shelter for 48 hours. None of the regular training grounds are large enough for our needs. None of you need to be concerned. Though we will be outside the village walls, it will be quite safe. XXXXXXXXXXX. The man looked at the picture on his desk. The picture was about 15 years old. It showed him standing beside his son. They had both been ninjas of the village hidden in the rock. The picture had been taken to celebrate his son's promotion to Chunin. He could still remember how proud he'd been of Hideki. The boy had always made him proud. Then 2 months later he died at the hands of the Yellow Flash. Now he was slowly becoming an old man with no son to carry on the family name. The Motosuwa clan would end with him. Well, the Yellow Flash had died more than 8 years ago. But the hatred and need for revenge hadn't. Nothing he could do could bring Hideki back. Nothing he could do would cause pain to Namikaze Minato, who was beyond all earthly retribution now. But his hatred demanded that someone suffer. How sure are you of this information? He asked his assistant. Our agents in Konoha confirm it. It seems reliable. The man behind the desk nodded. All this would cost him was money, and he had plenty of that. I want a 2-man Anbu squad sent out. The assistant shook his head. I'm afraid Anbu are not permitted to perform foreign missions unless they are at least of A rank. This has received a ranking of B. We can send Yuzuki and Grella, they'll do it. The mission is be upgraded to A rank. But sir, we haven't had the funds cleared to pay for an A rank. The older man frowned at his assistant's small-mindedness. I'll make up the difference myself. His assistant stared at him. Typical bureaucrat, he could never understand why anyone would want to go outside the rules. Well sir, if you're really willing to pay it, I suppose we can assign them. The assistant paused a bit. But sir, if I may ask, why bother? The target isn't even a ninja, he's just an academy student. Hiring Anbu to deal with him is a bit like hiring a master thief to pick up a wallet lying on the ground. I know he's a student. He also has the blood of a Hokage in his veins. Not to mention he is reputed to have mastered shadow clones and summoning. Sir, that is a ridiculous rumor and likely to be nothing more than some child's wild imagination. He is reported to have killed a Chunin single-handedly. Is that also imagination? No sir, that was definitely confirmed, but perhaps he was lucky. Well, he can have all the luck Kami is willing to share. Against those two he won't stand a chance. For that I'll pay any cost. His assistant sighed. I will do as you say, sir, though I don't understand it. Ever have any children, Fuji? No sir. I won't bother trying to explain it then. XXXXXXXXXXX. Survival exercises. Kushina looked at the permission slip unhappily. Yeah mom. This will be my very first time going outside the village walls. He said excitedly. No. What? I said no, Naruto-kun, you aren't going. Kushina said simply. But everyone else is going. She lifted an eyebrow. Naruto-kun, I don't care about everyone else. I only care about you, and you are not going. But we're only going 10 miles and it will only be for 2 days. Why can't I go? Simple, because 10 miles means 10 minutes before I can reach you if anything happens. That's too long, too much can happen in that much time. But mom, you know I can take care of myself. You can, Naruto-kun, that doesn't mean we should court danger. Oh come on mom, I mean if it's safe enough for Shikamaru, how can it be too dangerous for me? Naruto-kun, for you stepping outside this village means being in greater danger. She said flatly. So the very first time I ever go outside the village walls even a step will be on my first mission. Mom, you're always saying I need to be ready for anything. How does keeping me so close do that? Wouldn't it be better for me to get experience being outside the village now instead of later when I will a shinobi with a squad? She frowned at him. That made a distressing amount of sense. Looked at rationally, of course he should see what it was like going outside the village sooner than his first mission. And it was just an academy field trip. Maybe I am just too worried about him. I have to let him experience new things in order to grow. Seeing her hesitate, Naruto gave her a big confident smile. Come on mom, I promise to be careful and to call you if there's anything wrong at all. She sighed and slowly nodded. All right Naruto-kun, I suppose it will be all right so long as you are careful. Taking a pen, she signed her name to the paper. XXXXXXXXXXX. Itachi waited patiently as the door to his father's study opened. 3 very angry-looking members of the police force exited. They each sent him an angry look but departed the house without a word. Fugaku looked at his son and heir. Please come into my study, Itachi. Itachi did so. His father shut and locked the door. Sit down. I prefer to stand. Itachi answered calmly. Fugaku frowned. Very well. He sat down behind his desk. Itachi, do you know anything about the drowning of Shisui? No. Itachi remained utterly calm. I can't read him at all. He might as well be a complete stranger. Shisui left behind a suicide note, but there is suspicion that his death was a murder. I am the suspect. Again there was no emotion at all. Fugaku nodded once. Despite our recent disagreements, son, I have no wish for you to risk execution for something that may not have been your fault. Itachi eyed him intently. You are not certain of my innocence. You believe I may indeed be his killer. It was not an accusation, just a statement. I do not know what to believe. Your behavior recently has been erratic. Shisui had been assigned to follow you. Last night when he was killed, you were the only clan member not attending the formal meeting. Thus you are the only clan member without an alibi for the time of Shisui's death. Itachi frowned slightly. And only an Uchiha could possibly manage to kill another Uchiha. He shook his head. That sort of circular logic is what is reducing this clan to idiocy. Fugaku frowned. It is statements like that which have made people wonder about you. You are the pride of the Uchiha clan and its most powerful member. Why must you constantly insult and degrade the clan and the immense value of Uchiha blood? Because you all insist that being an Uchiha is the end point rather than a starting point. We should each seek out our own path and seek to accomplish as much as possible. This self-assurance we are mired in erodes individual initiative and drive. Fugaku shook his head. Uchiha blood is the best in the entire world, never mind Konoha. There is nothing wrong in being proud of the fact and acknowledging it. He sighed. But that is not important now. What is important is the fact that you are under suspicion. I have used my influence to have the police to agree to a short delay in the proceedings while they gather more evidence. But you have no more than a few days. He brought his hands together before his face. I think it would be best for you to leave the village. Itachi stared at his father for a moment. You wish me to become a missing nin? His voice was dead and empty. For a few years only. After which I shall arrange a pardon with the Hokage. He leaned back in his chair. If you will perform one service for me prior to leaving Konoha. Who do you wish me to kill? Itachi did not mean that as a joke. Fugaku did not take it as a joke. Namikaze Naruto. Itachi lifted one eyebrow. You want me to kill the Namikaze clan heir. And you expect me to believe that once I do so you will be able to arrange a pardon for me. Itachi allowed just the tiniest bit of mockery to lace his words. Once Naruto is dead no one will regret it. Except his mother. Itachi pointed out. Once Naruto is gone she won't last very long. Fugaku spoke with a grim certainty. Itachi eyed his father with a hint of interest. Indeed, you do realize you are speaking of exterminating one of Konoha's greatest clans. I think destroying this clan would be a benefit to the entire village. I shall remember you said that. Itachi promised. Kushina is not your concern. Will you do as I ask? Perhaps, but first I wish to know the reason you and so many others are so eager to spill his blood. Fugaku frowned. The reasons are irrelevant. It should be enough that I ask it of you and that doing so will be in your own best interest. In that case my answer is no. Itachi, why should you care about the reasons behind this? If I am to kill not only a clan heir but a promising ninja I wish to know the reasons for it. Fugaku eyed his son with frustration. He has more potential than anyone else of his generation. Why must he insist on being difficult even now? Very well, I will tell you the secret. In doing so I am breaking a law of the Sandames. The punishment for breaking this law is death. I trust you understand the seriousness of the matter. Itachi nodded, he found himself to now be quite curious. I do. Very well, to put it simply Naruto is the Kyuubi. Itachi did not show it but he was truly surprised. He had theorized quite a few reasons why Naruto might be hated but he had never come up with that one. He stood there and listened quietly as his father explained fully. And so that is why Naruto is hated and why killing him is a service to this entire village. Once he and his bitch of a mother are dead and buried you will be welcomed back with open arms. Now then, will you do as I ask? Itachi frowned slightly. I have never heard of any evidence of demonic possession in his behavior. He has a source of great power within him which he seems well capable of controlling. Would the village not be better off aiding him in mastering his power rather than trying to destroy him? His father stared at him. I have to remind myself that while I and others of our clan were out fighting that monster you were safe here in the village. If you had ever seen the nine-tailed fox you would have no doubts about killing it while there is still time. Now will you do as I ask? Itachi considered it. Perhaps. His father shut his eyes and ground his teeth. Even now, with the future of the village and your own life at stake you insist on being difficult. I am not attempting to be difficult. The simple fact is I have not decided whether or not to kill him. All right son, I know how useless it is to argue with you but keep this in mind, in a few days you will be arrested if you are still within this village. Once you are arrested I will wash my hands of you. Should you flee this village I will again wash my hands of you unless you do as I ask. Is that clear? It is father. With that Itachi left his father's study. XXXXXXXXXX. Hey Naruto. I hardly recognize you without your cloak on. Kiba greeted him. It was early Saturday morning and the class was gathering on the courtyard. As per instructions they had not brought any camping equipment or food with them and they each carried only one canteen of water. They were allowed to bring with them only weapons and the standard ninja equipment any shinobi would be expected to have with him at any time. Currently Naruto was dressed in the same black and red bodysuit he always wore beneath his cloak. I'll only wear that when I am in the village. I won't be wearing it when I'm on missions or leave the village. They wouldn't let me bring any snacks. Choji cried out. I'm going to starve. Choji, it's impossible to starve in just 2 days. Shikamaru said. But what am I supposed to do when I get hungry? I have to eat or I'll pass out from hunger. Don't worry Choji, there are plenty of grub worms in the forest and if you cook them over an open fire they taste just like chicken. Naruto said. As soon as he said it Choji put his hands over his mouth and tried to stop his dry heaves. Shikamaru smirked and Kiba laughed long and hard. Naruto-kun, that was awful. Hinata chided. He gave her his puppy dog look and then turned to Choji. I'm sorry Choji. It's okay, he said weakly. Naruto smiled at him. It's actually beetles that taste like chicken. Choji's hands went back to his mouth and Kiba howled. Hinata crossed her arms over her chest and gave Naruto a look that clearly said, what am I going to do with you? XXXXXXXXXX. Under Iruka's and Mizuki's watch they left Konoha and made their way to a section of forest that had been set aside for the exercises. Each student was taken to a different section of forest and told to remain there until 8 a.m. Monday morning, each student was left alone and was expected to manage on his own. As soon as Iruka dropped him off he got to work. Creating 20 shadow clones he set out hacking down tree limbs to build a shelter, looking for a water source, and hunting. In short order he had a rough but efficient hut set up, a small spring found, and a campfire with a nice fat rabbit cooking over it. Finding the rabbit had been the easiest part. He seemed to have a natural gift for it. He didn't know about the other students but he was sure to have no trouble managing a couple of days. Having eaten he took a little time to just enjoy the rather unique experience of being on his own for once. He had never been on his own for any extended time. For once there was no one nearby who was watching out for him, no one was responsible for him. For the next, he checked his watch, 46 hours or so. He was on his own. He smiled and looked up at the blue sky. He liked it. XXXXXXXXXXX. Boo. Eek. Hinata dropped the branches she'd been gathering and instinctively jumped around bringing her hand around for a palm strike. He blocked her hand easily enough and gave Hinata one of his big smiles. Gee Hinata-chan, I thought you'd be happy to see me. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? He shrugged. I was bored and I wanted to see you. But how did you find me? He smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Oh, well I just searched the area until I spotted you. By the way I'm about 4 miles that way. She stared at him. Naruto-kun you can't be here. Why not? If Iruka or Mizuki-sensei find out you'll be in trouble. Hinata-chan they're not going to check up on us. The whole point of this exercise is for us to survive on our own. But Naruto-kun if you help me that will be cheating. He looked around. Hinata had put together a shelter, had a fire going and looked to have gathered a good number of roots and herbs. I don't think you need any help Hinata-chan, I never thought you would. She smiled and felt pleasure from his simple praise. I was just bored and wanted to hang out with you. Oh. Her smile grew and she began to blush just a little. He shrugged. If you want me to go Hinata-chan I guess I'll find Kiba or Shikamaru. She reached out and took a hold of his hand. No Naruto-kun, you are always welcome. He smiled and relaxed the way he always did around her. XXXXXXXXXXX. He got back to his own camp a little more than an hour before sunset. He rebuilt the fire and found another rabbit for dinner. After another tasty meal he watched as the sun set over the forest. It had been one of the best days of his whole life. And as he stood there looking at the setting sun he felt the tiniest bit of a chakra signature behind him. Casually he put one hand in his belt by the switch for his radio communicator. He slowly turned around. Seeing who was there he pressed the button down into the send position. Hello Itachi-kun. Hello Naruto-kun. A calm voice answered. Chapter 9. Itachi was standing on a tree limb about 20 feet away. He was wearing his Anbu armor but no mask. He did not have a weapon out and was just looking down. Naruto casually put his hand on his sword but didn't draw it. So why is an Anbu captain here in the middle of an academy training exercise? I am here because of you Naruto-kun. Yeah I kind of guessed that. So are you going to attack me or what? Itachi's eyes flickered to a spot behind Naruto. Move. Itachi was gone from the limb instantly. Naruto yanked out his sword and leapt to the right ready for an attack from any direction. As he did so, he sensed movement and chakra coming from behind him. Naruto glanced back to see a ninja he didn't recognize burst out of the forest. Moreover, as he looked Itachi appeared right behind and drove a kunai into the base of his skull. The new arrival let out a gurgle and pitched forward dead. Itachi came to a halt and stood there looking tranquil. Naruto landed and turned to face him with his sword ready. Whoa, he took that ninja out like it was nothing. What's going on here? Whose side are you on? Itachi looked at him. There is one more. And disappeared. Almost immediately, another ninja burst out of the forest. Like the first one Naruto didn't recognize him and he wore no Hitai-ite. Grella. The ninja screamed out. You bastard. He began tossing shuriken and Naruto was forced to move fast to avoid them. He leapt behind a large tree to gain some temporary cover. This guy is definitely Jonin so I'm not fooling around with him. Shadow clone technique. 20 Narutos appeared in a large puff of smoke. As a group, they rushed out to surround their opponent and come at him from all sides. The enemy ninja used a jutsu of his own. Rock garden technique. All around him jagged slabs of rock shot up out of the ground. The clones were all struck and immediately puffed out of existence. The original was also struck and wound up being knocked to the ground. The ninja quickly ran through some more hand signs. Domu barrier technique. Before Naruto could even get back to his feet, the earth around him leapt up to completely surround and trap him. "You're finished now," Yuzuki called out. "I can drain your chakra while you're trapped in there. Once I've sucked you dry, I'll finish you off. Don't bother trying to break out." Without warning, half of the earth-made dome exploded. Naruto stood there with a sword in his right hand and his left hand glowing with chakra. He grinned a bit and looked at his left hand. "Thanks Godmother, so much more useful than stupid medical jutsus. I don't know who you are and I don't really care. But let me show you my power." He rushed forward eager to end it. He really is the Yellow Flash's son. Living Colossus technique. His body transformed from flesh into solid rock. Naruto launched his attack just as the technique took effect. He aimed his sword's strike for the middle of the chest. The strike hit perfectly, and as Naruto drove the sword home, the blade snapped in half. To his credit, Naruto was able to improvise immediately. He dropped his broken sword, curled his left hand into a fist and swung that. With his chakra enhancing the blow, he could have certainly destroyed his enemy's rock body as easily as he has the rock dome. But fortunately for Yuzuki, his jutsu did not slow his reaction time. He was just able to catch Naruto's fist in his own hand before it could reach him. Yuzuki held Naruto's fist firmly trapped in his rock-hard grip. He looked at the 8-year-old who had killed his best friend and partner. "You really are the Yellow Flash's son, aren't you?" "Yes, I am." Even in the situation, he was in, Naruto answered proudly. Yuzuki nodded once respectfully and then proceeded to crush the boy's hand. Naruto screamed out in pain as the blood began to flow down his left arm. "If you lived, you'd be as powerful as he was. It's a good thing we were sent here." He yanked Naruto up by his now useless hand and let him dangle in front of him like a fish caught on a hook. "Just so you know, you little bastard, all the power in the world is worthless if you can't reach your target. Now, no more jutsus for you, and I get a little payback for what you did to Grella." With that said, he whipped Naruto about like a sack of potatoes and threw him full force into a tree. Naruto hit with most of his side and felt and heard his ribs break with a sickening snap. He was crying out in pain as he dropped to the ground. Yuzuki casually walked up to him and kicked him in the belly hard enough to send him flying about 10 feet. XXXXXXXXXX. Itachi watched and frowned as Naruto was being beaten to death. "It seems I overestimated you, Naruto-kun. I guess you weren't as strong as I'd thought." XXXXXXXXXXX. She heard her son scream and it was like a kunai slicing into her heart. She damned herself for letting this happen. She damned herself for not being able to do anything but listen as her poor boy was being killed. She was more than halfway there, but her fear told her there was no hope. Naruto wasn't fighting anymore, he was just being beaten. That sick bastard Itachi was just playing with him and it couldn't last long. Not long enough for her to save him. Her son howled and she screamed out in pain as well. If he died, if she lost him because she had let him go on this stupid exercise, she would find and kill Itachi, and then she would kill herself. She couldn't stand to live without her poor son. XXXXXXXXXX. Yuzuki held the boy up at arm's length and looked him over. His nose was smashed and his face covered in blood. His left arm was broken, left hand smashed. From the way he was struggling to breathe, all his ribs were probably broken, and he thought the right leg was broken too. Every breath was an agony for the boy, yet he was still able to look up at him and speak. "Who are you?" "An enemy of your father's, that is all you need know. You haven't suffered enough for what you did to Grella, but if I did this to you for a year it wouldn't be enough, and I don't have all day." He put one hand around Naruto's throat. "Now before I end this, I would like to hear the son of the Yellow Flash beg me for mercy." "Beg?" Yuzuki smiled. "That's right. Beg me to spare you. Beg like the pitiful dog that you are." He began to squeeze. Better start begging before it's too late. He knew he was about to die. He felt a great deal of fear, a lot of regret, and even some shame. However, as the hand began tightening around his throat, what he felt more than anything else was anger. Anger that his life was ending now, like this. Anger that he was being denied the chance to achieve his destiny. Anger at what he knew this would do to his mother and to Hinata-chan. It can't end like this. I can't just die here like this, for nothing. No, no, no. And as his anger became white-hot, he felt something deep inside him come to life. Yuzuki watched as the boy's eyes turned from blue to red. Despite the situation, he hesitated for just a moment. What are you? And it was that momentary hesitation that killed him. For as he stood there he saw red chakra begin to flow around the boy and he felt an evil and malevolent power coming from it. What the hell are you? He squeezed his hand but the red chakra was now between it and the boy's neck. Naruto looked at him with hatred and screamed his answer. I'm a future Hokage. And until I become Hokage I will never die. Acting on pure instinct, he reached out to grab his attacker and the red chakra bent to his will. A gigantic paw flowed out from around him and clutched around the ninja's chest, lifting him roughly about 20 feet into the air. Holding up his own right hand, he brought his fingers together and made a fist. Die. The gigantic paw crushed Yuzuki like a bug between two stones. Yuzuki's body exploded into a shower of rock which reverted to flesh and became a shower of blood and meat. Seeing what he had just done, he smiled and was glad to have killed him. With the threat now removed though his anger bled away and the chakra did as well. When the red chakra left him, he collapsed to the ground broken and powerless. Mom, he whispered, too beaten to do more than that. XXXXXXXXX. She'd heard him scream out that he would never die until he was Hokage. Heard him command that Itachi die and then silence, nothing at all. Then she'd heard him call out to her. She didn't know what had happened but she had hoped that she just might make it in time. She was less than a mile away, less than 1 minute from him. Hold on Naruto-kun, just a little bit longer. Though he couldn't hear her, she prayed he knew she was close. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto watched as Itachi approached him and wondered if he was still going to die today. He couldn't even move. You going to finish the job? To his immense relief Itachi shook his head. No Naruto-kun. You are truly extraordinary and to deny you the chance to develop your full power would be a tragic shame. I want to see just how powerful you can become. Glad to hear it. As Naruto watched, his mother suddenly appeared behind Itachi. Her katana was out and already swinging for his neck. Mom no. Die. Kushina screamed. He didn't seem to move. One instant he was facing Naruto and talking to him. The next he was looking at Kushina, her right wrist caught by his hand. Her blade had been brought to a halt a bare inch from his exposed neck. Please do not attack me Kushina. I did not harm your son. Naruto stared not believing he had just seen someone block his mother's attack with nothing but his bare hand. Mom, it's true Itachi-kun didn't attack me. He killed one of the ninjas who did. Kushina stared at Itachi, clearly just as amazed that he had stopped her. She still did not trust him but was willing to believe her son. All right, I won't attack you. He released his hold on her and she swiftly moved to her son's side, staying between him and Itachi. Her blade remained up and ready. I thank you, Itachi said politely. If Naruto says you helped him then I believe it. Kushina eyed him warily. But I would still like to know what you were doing here in the first place. The explanation is simple. I was ordered by my father to assassinate your son. What? Kushina's killer intent spiked and her katana twitched in her hands. Itachi held up a hand. I chose to disobey the order and came here to deliver a warning to Naruto-kun. He looked to Naruto. My warning is simple Naruto-kun. Never trust any member of the Uchiha clan, and that includes my brother. He looked to Kushina again. You should also be aware that had I actually killed Naruto my father intended to arrange your death as well. What? Naruto cried out, far more upset at the thought of his mother's death than at his own. Fugaku is a dead man. Kushina said flatly. Will you go with me to the tower and testify to all this before the Hokage? Itachi shook his head. No, for you see while I chose to protect your son I have already committed murder. I will be leaving Konoha to become a missing nin. A slight grin touched his lips. I trust that you will not try to stop me. Kushina shook her head. After what you've done today, no. Itachi looked back down to Naruto. You have great power within you Naruto-kun. Work hard to develop it and reach your full potential for I intend to do the same. One day I intend to test myself against you and see which of us is the stronger. He gave a slight informal bow. Until that day Naruto-kun, goodbye. With that, he disappeared. With Itachi gone, Kushina finally knelt beside her bloodied and broken boy. She quickly performed a basic medical jutsu to check his vitals. "Oh Naruto-kun, my baby. Everything is going to be alright. Mommy is here and I'll take care of you." She was relieved to find that despite the beating he had taken, his heartbeat and breathing were both steady. Her son would live. "Mom, I hurt," he said quietly. She knew how proud and strong he could be and how much pain he had to be in to admit that. "It's all right dear. I have something to help." She quickly opened one of the pouches on her belt and went through it. She finally found what she had been looking for. She removed the needle's cap and squirted out just a little of the creamy white drug. She then stuck into a shoulder and pushed down the needle's plunger. "Here my darling one, the morphine will take the pain away and help you sleep. I'm getting you to the hospital right now." She dipped her sword in a puddle of blood, then quickly wiped it clean and holstered it. She then took her precious little boy into her arms. "Thank you Mom, that helps." His voice was already sounding sleepy. "Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough. Don't worry about that. It's not important. You survived, that's all that matters." "It wasn't me Mom." His mind was beginning to drift. The red chakra, he fell into sleep. She cradled him close to her and moved as fast as she had come. She wasn't worried about what he'd said, there would be time for him to tell her everything later. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hinata. Haruka's voice called out loudly as he landed nearby. Hinata quickly got to her feet. "Yes Haruka-sensei. Please gather all your things. Mizuki, I and some other instructors are gathering all your classmates. The exercises are over." "But why Haruka-sensei?" Her teacher looked at her with deep unhappiness. "I am afraid one of the students was attacked. We had a perimeter set up around the forest, but it looks as though a pair of foreign ninja were able to penetrate it." A terrible thought made her stomach turn to ice. "Haruka-sensei, it wasn't Naruto-kun, was it?" He looked at her and sadly nodded. "I'm afraid it was." Hinata felt her entire world disappear. Haruka caught her as she fainted. XXXXXXXXXXX. "Hello father." A calm voice spoke from the shadows. Fugaku stared at his son as he stepped out into the light. "Itachi, what happened?" "I've heard reports that Naruto was attacked but survived. He is in the hospital under Anbu protection." "How did you fail?" "I did not fail. Naruto was attacked by a pair of foreign ninjas. I did not attack him." "You watched as a pair of foreign ninjas attacked him and you did nothing." "Actually father, I killed one of the two ninjas." Fugaku looked at him as though he were insane. "You helped him?" Itachi nodded calmly. "That is correct." "Why? Why would you do such a thing?" Fugaku demanded. "Because Naruto has a power inside of him that I want to see grow and develop. I want to see him become a truly powerful ninja so that I may one day test myself against him and learn what I am truly capable of." And saying that, he took out his sword from his back and drove it into his father's chest. Fugaku gasped and choked out blood. "You are too determined to kill Naruto, so I am afraid I cannot leave you alive." Itachi stood there and watched the light leave his father's eyes, and felt nothing. A moment later, his mother entered the study and began screaming. Itachi appeared behind her and silenced her with a punch to the back of the skull. She fell to the floor unconscious, but very much alive. He then calmly walked out of his home. As he walked into the night, a few people recognized him. He politely returned their greetings. He had considered killing them all as a service to the village. In his opinion, the entire clan had degenerated to the point of being a disease that would only sicken Konoha. He had thought of performing the service of curing Konoha of this disease prior to leaving. However, he had reconsidered. If so many of the villagers and shinobi wanted to harm Naruto, then the entire village was already diseased and perhaps terminally so. Besides, with the Uchiha clan intact, Naruto would have a powerful enemy always right outside his door. That would give him excellent motivation. Thinking of motivation, Itachi smiled. XXXXXXXXXXX. Sasuke. Nissan. Sasuke hurried up to his big brother. "Did you hear? Naruto got attacked by a couple of ninjas and is in the hospital right now." Itachi looked at him consideringly. "Do you hope he survives?" Sasuke looked shocked by the question. "Of course I do. Even if I don't like him, I don't want him to die. Come with me Sasuke, there are things I must tell you." In short order the two of them were in a dark alley not far from the Uchiha compound. I am leaving the village tonight, little brother. After tonight I will become a missing nin and the disgrace of the Uchiha clan. He said it as calmly as he did everything else. What? Sasuke looked at his revered big brother. Why would you do that? Because 3 days ago I murdered Shisui and less than an hour ago I murdered our father. He answered calmly. Seeing Sasuke was about to start screaming, he planted a hand over his mouth. I have no intention of harming you, little brother. However, should you begin to scream I will. Do you understand? Sasuke nodded and Itachi released his hand. Why? He sobbed. Why did you kill father? To protect Naruto. What? Itachi nodded. Father ordered me to assassinate him. I refused the order and helped him to survive this night's attack. Not that he needed much help. He is already very powerful and will grow more so. Father was a fool and would have kept attempting to kill him. To safeguard Naruto's future it was necessary to end our father's life. You killed father to help Naruto. Sasuke whispered. Indeed, but that is not all. Let me show you something. He shut his eyes and activated the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Sasuke was drawn into a colorless world. He recognized it as the Uchiha compound. What is this? Sasuke asked in fear and confusion. Watch. His brother spoke. As Sasuke watched, he saw a familiar figure walk into the Uchiha compound. Why would Naruto come here? And as Sasuke watched, Naruto changed. It was like watching a snake shed its skin. He began to shake and be covered by visible chakra, and then he began to grow and change shape. In short, Order Naruto had become a gigantic nine-tailed fox. What is this? He watched as his friends and family all began to flee and as the fox began to level the Uchiha compound. Brother, stop this. Watch closely. His brother intoned. Mother. Sasuke howled as his mother was snatched up into the fox's jaws and devoured. He stood there and watched as his home was flattened and as the people he loved were slaughtered by the beast. He was on his knees crying and begging for it to stop. Itachi could have forced Sasuke to relive it for 72 hours. But Itachi's goal in this was to provide his foolish little brother with motivation, not shatter his mind. He ended the effect and they were again in the alleyway. Sasuke crumpled to the ground weeping. For him it had seemed utterly real. Naruto possesses the Kyuubi within him, that is why he is hated by so many. That is also why he is so powerful. That is the power I want to help him grow. You want that? Sasuke said in horror. He remembered Naruto's red eyes. Yes, I want Naruto to achieve as much power as he can. And if in reaching his potential he should lay waste to this entire village and everyone, that would be small loss. Have no doubt, Sasuke, that what you saw will come to pass one day. If you really believe that, then why? Why would you help him and even kill father just to help him? I need a powerful opponent to test my abilities against. Naruto is the only one in this entire village who I think might one day have the power to do that. Itachi managed a tiny smile. And do you know why, Sasuke? Because he knows how to hate. I saw him kill his opponent and felt his anger and his hatred. It was a wonder to behold. To gain real power you must have a deep and powerful hatred to drive you. Good. Because I hate you and I hate Naruto. Itachi did finally see hate in his brother's eyes. I'm going to kill both of you. Itachi nodded. Remember that you must kill Naruto first. If you are not strong enough to defeat him you will have no chance to defeat me. And in order to gain that strength you will need the same power I possess. You too can gain the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, but there is a cost. You must kill your closest friend. It is the grief of such a loss that will allow your Sharingan to reach the final state. But of course, before that day comes you must activate your Sharingan. Now remember, little brother, you must learn to hate and pursue power at all cost. Only in that way can you ever hope to defeat me or Naruto. With that he hit his brother and knocked him out. Perfect. Naruto will never trust the Uchihas. Sasuke will hate Naruto and try to destroy him. They will be enemies and there is no possibility of either one ever trusting the other. Their hatred and rivalry will help each gain greater power. Whichever one kills the other should make an excellent test of my abilities. I would put my money on Naruto. But at least I have given you your chance, Sasuke. I've given you your motivation and a set goal. I have given you the chance to be a great ninja. After all, what is an older brother for? XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto opened his eyes. He was lying in a grass field with many sweet-smelling flowers. He didn't feel any pain. He got to his feet and looked around. A little ways in front of him was an old ruined fortress. It had been made of black stone and seemed to have mostly fallen in on itself. Being curious, he decided to explore. As he neared it, he saw the arched gateway into the fort was blocked by a huge iron gate, a lot like the one in front of his home. In the middle of the gate, he saw a single seal. Approaching the gate slowly, he tried to peer inside, but even though it was day out, the inside of the fortress was utterly dark. "Hello," he called out. "Is there anyone there?" And he heard it. A low dry laughter that scared him and made his spine tingle. He was already backing away when the two large red eyes opened. He froze. He was terrified but couldn't make himself move. He wondered if this was what a rabbit felt when the wolf's eyes fell upon him. And then the teeth. 2 rows of long sharp teeth seemed to grin down hungrily. "Finally you have come. Kneel before me and show me proper respect." A voice like thunder cried out. "Who are you?" he whispered. Laughter thick with malice made his stomach turn. "I am the great and powerful Kyuubi." Chapter 10. Sasuke took his usual seat. It was Monday morning and the start of another week of school. Everything was the same as always. Everything was completely different. "Oh Sasuke-kun, can I sit next to you?" an excited Sakura asked. He folded his hands in front of his face. She took this as an affirmative and sat down beside her crush. "Isn't it terrible what happened Saturday? I mean, I can hardly believe it. And I hear that one of the ninjas who attacked Naruto was torn apart. Can you believe that?" Despite himself, he shut his eyes and shivered a bit. "Can I believe Naruto could tear someone apart? Oh yes, without a doubt." He was trying to ignore her and hoped she would get the hint he was not being talkative. Sakura noticed Sasuke's depressed mood and tried to cheer him. "You know Sasuke-kun, it really speaks well of your generous soul that you're so upset about Naruto." He turned his head a bit to look at her. "I mean, I had no idea you cared so much about him that his being in the hospital would depress you. You really are very thoughtful and kind." He turned away from her without a word. "Typical airhead. I'm depressed because my father was killed by my psychotic brother and because I know one of my classmates is a monster." In all fairness, there was a reason Sakura didn't know about Sasuke's personal tragedy. The Uchiha clan had moved swiftly to cover up what had happened. The Uchihas were a rather secretive lot to begin with. After Itachi's murder and betrayal, it had been decided not to make any of what had happened public, lest the clan's reputation suffer. And since the Uchihas had a huge influence with the police force, it was not hard to do. Sasuke had found it difficult but had agreed to not speak of it to anyone outside the clan. "Did you send him any flowers?" Sakura asked with an annoyingly cheerful grin. "I sent him a few, just to be nice since he is in the hospital." He looked at her again. "No Sakura," he said icily. "I didn't send him any flowers." Sakura could feel the chill and numbly nodded and cast her eyes down. She didn't understand what she had said to get that sort of reaction. Seeing that Sakura was going to leave him alone, Sasuke looked around the classroom. There were Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba all sitting in the back row talking. Shikamaru was complaining that even though it would be troublesome, he would go with the other two to visit Naruto after class. Across on the other side, Ino was holding court and bragging to the other dimwit girls about how many flowers she had sent Naruto. Looking all about the room, he was not surprised to see Hinata was missing. He was sure she was at the hospital, probably curled up at Naruto's feet. He turned his face back to the front. He felt contempt for all of them. They were all gullible fools who had fallen for an act. None of them had the slightest idea that the boy they were so worried about would probably end up eating them one day. When his mother had recovered from her shock at what had happened, he'd spoken to her about what Itachi had told him. To his horror, she had confirmed that what Big Brother had said was the truth. Naruto was the Kyuubi. Then his mother had told him about the Sandame's law. He couldn't even tell his classmates the sort of danger they were in without putting his neck, literally, on the chopping block. He sighed. In just one day his life had changed completely. On Saturday morning life had been good, if not perfect. By Saturday night his father had been murdered, his mother shattered, his idolized Big Brother had become a heartless killer, and Naruto was a monster that would destroy them all one day. And one more thing had happened: his childhood had ended. Now he was an adult, and an adult with a terrible responsibility. He would have to be the savior of his clan and his village, as well as his father's avenger. He would have to be the one to save Konoha from the Kyuubi and then kill his older brother to avenge his father. That was an awful lot to put on an 8-year-old's shoulders. But he was his father's son and an Uchiha, he would bear up to it and fulfill his responsibilities. His very first thought of course had been to alert the clan of the danger and of all of them acting together to deal with it. His mother had been horrified at the suggestion. She had quickly explained to him that all the adults in the village knew about the Kyuubi, it was a secret only to the younger generation. If the clan did as he suggested, it would be an open declaration of war not just against Namikaze but against Hyuga as well. Many of the adults might hate Naruto, but few were ready to go as far as civil war to try and kill him. Hearing that, the very next thought that had occurred to him was simply to do it himself the next time he saw him. He pictured himself as heroically slaying the monster and being hailed as a savior. It was a nice image, but the more he thought about it the more he realized it was impossible. After the beating in the courtyard he was honest enough with himself to admit he was no match for Naruto. Though he'd be damned if he'd admit it to anyone else. He tried to look at the problem like an adult rather than as a frustrated kid. Iruka, Mizuki, Kushina, the Hyuga, the Sandaime, and the Anbu. The list of people Naruto had to defend him was depressingly long. Even more depressing was Kushina's near-mythical reputation for dealing with people who threatened her boy. For the life of him he didn't understand why all these people would protect the Kyuubi, but they did. Thinking about the problem and the obstacles in his path led him to a very adult decision. I can't do anything while he's in Konoha. He is just too well protected here. It'll have to be somewhere outside of Konoha, and that means it'll have to be after I become a shinobi. He sighed again. The thought of having to wait so long and having to live and work beside the Kyuubi frightened him. But he saw no other way. Everything I do for the next few years has to be aimed towards that day. I have to gain power and activate my Sharingan. I should probably try and get some allies on my side too, that would make it easier. When he thought about allies he had a disturbing realization. Nearly everyone he knew was on Naruto's side. That had never worried him before, he had his clan after all. But he would also need people who would watch his back and do as he told them. Defeating Naruto and saving the village would be incredibly hard, he was going to need help. He carefully looked at the girl sitting next to him. She was still looking down at the desk. He let out yet another small sigh. He was not eager to do what he had in mind. But if it would help him save the village one day he was ready to make any sacrifice. He forced a small grin onto his face. Sakura-chan, he said gently. Her head snapped up immediately. Did he just call me Chan? Yes Sasuke-kun. He looked directly into her eyes and tried to convey a warmth he didn't feel. I'm very sorry if I was rude to you. I guess what happened Saturday has me feeling kind of bad. Seeing the look in his eyes and hearing the concern in his voice she immediately began to blush. Oh Kami. He's finally being nice to me. I knew I'd win him over eventually. It's all right Sasuke-kun, I understand. Say Sakura-chan, would you like to have lunch with me today? She began to giggle and Sasuke was immediately reminded of nails on a chalkboard. But the smile stayed in place. Sasuke-kun, I would love to have lunch with you. It's for the village and the greater good. Great. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto heard familiar voices as he slowly felt himself coming awake. Shish, I think his eyes are opening. Naruto-kun, honey, are you awake? A relieved and very comforting voice spoke to him. Yeah mom. He slowly opened his eyes. The lights were much too bright. He felt really sore, but at least he wasn't in pain anymore. Oh honey, I'm so glad. She leaned down and kissed both his cheeks. You've been asleep for 2 days. I've been so worried about you. Well, I haven't. I knew you were much too stubborn to be anything but all right. A chipper voice said. Naruto had to focus his eyes a bit. Is that you, Kakashi-nisan? Yo, he answered. I've just been keeping your mom company. Naruto-kun. Hinata leaned all the way over the edge of his hospital bed and fell onto the mattress beside him. She was desperate to put her arms around him and didn't care. She put her arms around his neck and pressed her face against his cheek. Oh Naruto-kun, I am so glad you're all right. I was so worried about you. She was hugging him with all her might and his body was sore. Ow. She immediately let go and bolted upright. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. Oh, I didn't mean to hurt you. She was trying to scramble away when he got a hold of her hand with his right. It's okay. Hinata-chan. It's okay. Just be a little gentle, that's all. With his hand he began tugging her back towards him. She let him pull her back towards him. Are you sure, Naruto-kun? She asked nervously. I'm sure, Hinata-chan. I like it when you hug me, just be gentle. With his encouragement she carefully put her arms around his neck again and her face rested next to his. His right arm he put around her waist. He tried to put his other arm around her but it refused to lift, it felt like it was weighted down. Is this all right, Naruto-kun? She asked shyly. It felt just a little weird to be lying on top of him like this. But after the last 2 days she wanted contact with him. She wanted him to be in her arms. He smiled at her fondly. Yeah, Hinata-chan, that feels fine. She closed her eyes and sighed contentedly. Kushina and Kakashi were both looking at the 2 8-year-olds and smiling. They really were just too cute. How are you feeling, son? I feel sore, mom, but I'm not in pain. My left arm though, it feels heavy. He finally managed to lift his arm. His forearm was in a cast. His hand was a huge mass of bandages, the fingers were hidden. Mom, if I've been here 2 days, why am I still a mess? I normally heal really fast. Kushina frowned. I know, son, but those wounds were always cuts or tears. You had a lot of broken bones and whatever it is in your chemistry that gives you fast healing doesn't seem to work as well on that. It may also be that your body just took so much damage at one time. You were in surgery for over 6 hours being treated. Most of your bones have been healed and will just need a little while to finish setting. She looked very unhappy. I'm afraid your left hand though suffered a lot of damage. How bad is it? Naruto looked at the wrappings at the end of his forearm. The medic nins say you might not regain full use of it again. She saw the panic in his eyes and motioned for him to be calm. But I've sent for your godmother. I don't know when she'll get here, but when she does we'll see what she says. Naruto slowly nodded. He knew his godmother was the world's greatest medic nin. He shut his eyes and put his arm back down. I don't suppose it really matters anymore. He sounded defeated. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Honey, don't be depressed. I'm sure once Tsunade is here she'll be able to heal you. Yes, Naruto-kun, Hinata said. I'm sure everything will be fine now. He looked at her and smiled a bit sadly. Hinata-chan, would you mind waiting in the hall for a little bit while I talk to my mom alone? He looked at Kakashi. Would you mind too, Nisan? Oh, well, of course, Naruto-kun. Hinata was a little disappointed. She had just started getting comfortable. She quickly slid back off the hospital bed. All right, Naruto, come on, Hinata, let's get something to eat. The two of them left the room. Kushina looked at her son a bit curious. She had never seen him look so cheerless. Honey, I know how depressing it can be stuck in a hospital, but it's okay. We'll have you home soon, and once Tsunade gets here I'm sure you'll be just fine. No, Mom, I don't think I'm ever going to be fine again. He said with a depressing certainty. I'm not really worried about my hand. I'm sure Godmother will fix it. Even if she doesn't, I'll manage one way or another. Well, son, if you feel that way, why are you so depressed? Because I know, he said sadly. Know what? He looked at her with eyes filled with pain. I know why everyone hates me, Mom. I know what's inside me. Oh dear Kami, she whispered. Itachi told you. No, Mom, the Kyuubi told me. What? Son, what do you mean the Kyuubi told you? Terrifying thoughts of what that might mean flashed through her mind. I had a nightmare, Mom. In it the Kyuubi spoke to me. He told me what really happened the night I was born. He told me it was his power that let me heal fast, that gave me so much chakra capacity, and that gave me the red chakra. Mom, when I fought that ninja, it was the red chakra that saved me. It was the Kyuubi's power that saved me. I see, she said quietly. Well, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad for the Kyuubi's power. Mother and son looked at each other for a moment. Naruto sighed. When were you going to tell me, Mom? I don't know, she answered truthfully. I was planning to tell you sometime before you became a genin. To be honest, son, it wasn't a conversation I was eager to have. Mom, why did Dad do this to me? She took a deep shuddering breath. All at once she was remembering that night again. The Kyuubi's sudden appearance, its approach towards Konoha, her husband's desperate decision and her tearful agreement, her labor, her very first time holding him in her arms, her begging Minato not to take him, and finally darkness. It was the only way, son. A Biju cannot be killed by a mortal and the Kyuubi's power was too great to be stopped. The only choice, the only possible way to save the village was to trap the Kyuubi in a vessel that could adopt and hold all its chakra. And the only vessel that could do that was a newborn child with an undeveloped chakra system. Stopping the Kyuubi required two things, a newborn to act as the vessel and a human sacrifice to work the jutsu. He felt as the Hokage it was his duty to sacrifice himself to save the village. And as his son and heir he felt it was your duty to be the vessel. He did not feel he could justify asking another parent to make a sacrifice he was unwilling to. He felt it fell upon his clan to make the sacrifices necessary to save Konoha. She looked to her son and waited for his reaction. If he was bitter and angry he certainly had cause to be. Naruto looked down. He took a deep breath. I understand, he answered quietly. You do. Her son looked back up at her. He seemed weary but accepting. Mom, I've said before that I would give anything, even my life, to protect Konoha. He gave her a sad smile. I guess in a way I already have. I understand it. The Hokage's duty is to protect Konoha whatever the cost. I can't blame my father for fulfilling his duty. And being his son I can even understand why he chose me to bear this burden. He chuckled sourly. Even if everyone does hate me for it, son, everyone does not hate you. Kakashi, the Sandaime, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Hiashi, and all those people on the street who bow or cheer for you know the truth and see you as a hero, as your father wished. I suppose so, but there are plenty of people who hate me an awful lot. Kushina could hardly disagree with that. I guess it's time for me to find another goal. What do you mean? He looked at his mother in surprise. I mean about me becoming Hokage. Now that I know that I can never be Hokage, I'll need to find another goal for myself. She looked at him in astonishment. Son, what makes you think you can't be Hokage? He frowned at her. Mom, how can I be Hokage when I'm a monster? She sent a look of outrage and was at his side in an instant. Ow! He rubbed the top of his head with his right hand and looked at his mother in shock. Mom, you hit me. Except when they were sparring she had never hit him. Don't ever say that again, son. That's the sort of thing those fools who hate you say. Have you forgotten your promise so soon? Do you remember your very first day at the academy, son? What did I ask you to promise me? To never forget who I am. And who are you? He looked at her confused. Mom, I'm Namikaze Naruto, your son and the son of Namikaze Minato. Yes you are. She sat down on the bed and took him into her arms and hugged him close. You are my son and you are Minato's son and you are a good brave boy. Never ever think that you are anything else. Tell me, son, how did you feel when you killed those men at the academy? He swallowed at the memory. I felt bad, I felt guilty. And do you really think you would feel that if you were really the Kyuubi? But it was different the last time. When I used the red chakra I was happy that I killed. Were you also angry? Yes. Very, very angry. And were you scared? He simply nodded. Naruto-kun, it is perfectly normal and perfectly human to be happy at killing someone who was trying to kill you. That doesn't make you a demon. But Mom, the seal on my belly, my healing, the red chakra, are all a part of you, son. Just as your nose, or your liver, or your little toe are all a part but not all of you. The Kyuubi is inside of you, that is true. But you are not the Kyuubi and you never will be, no matter how many fools refuse to believe that. You have its power and perhaps even its knowledge, but you, Naruto, will choose how to use it. You said the red chakra saved your life. I would definitely call that a good use of the demon's power. Naruto-kun, we all possess the capacity for good or evil. We all choose the life's path we take. You are human and you have that same choice. What is special about you, my son, is the capacity you possess. You have great power within you, but that power can be used for either good or evil. The choice is yours. She looked into his eyes and spoke carefully. Use the Kyuubi's power, son. He looked at her in shock. That power belongs to you as much as the strength of your muscles does. Take the power within you and use it to guard and protect this village. As its Hokage, he put his one good arm around her and tried to hug her tight. Thanks, Mom, he said in a voice that ached with relief. Thank you for watching. Please remember, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have fanfictions you would like to see on the channel, leave them in the comments, and have a great day.